Chapter 1872. Previously, Tang Ao had said that he wanted to refine some of the demon-slaying acts. However, even now, Tang Ao had yet to refine the demon-slaying acts. Since Tang Ao had nothing to do, Tang Ao decided to start refining the demon-slaying acts. This was not the first time Tang Ao had refined such a high-grade immortal artifact. Previously, he had refined the primordial sacred heaven bow and the farmer god cauldron, which were of a slightly higher grade compared to the demon-slaying axe. The demon-slaying axe had 9 layers of restrictions. This time, Tang Ao was prepared to refine the first 3 layers of restrictions. If that was not possible, then he would only refine the second layer. After refining it, Tang Ao would be able to use the demon-slaying axe more smoothly, and the power of the demon-slaying axe would also be greater. He easily forced out a drop of blood essence from between his eyebrows and infused it into the demon-slaying axe. Immediately, Tang Ao sent his soul remembrance in. Previously, Tang Ao knew that the demon beheading axe's internal damage was severe. Now that he had started refining it, Tang Ao finally understood how severe the demon beheading axe's internal damage was. There were many inscription arrays inside the devil-slaying axe. These inscription arrays were like veins that covered the devil-slaying axe. But at this moment, more than 70% of these inscription arrays had been destroyed. Under the influence of each other, less than 10% of the inscription arrays inside the monster-slaying axe were still functioning. Tang Ao quickly refined the first layer of restrictions on the devil beheading axe. However, after refining the first layer of restrictions, Tang Ao did not continue to refine the second layer of restrictions. That was because refining the second layer of restrictions would be futile. After refining a layer of restrictions on the devil-slaying axe, Tang Ao held it in his hand. Immediately, he felt as though he could move it with his heart, as though he was intimately connected to it. Tang Ao held the demon beheading axe and casually swung it. An axe blade flew out from the demon beheading axe and shattered a basalt 10 meters away from Tang Ao. Sensing the berserk power of the devil-slaying axe, Tang Ao felt very satisfied. Without thinking too much, Tang Ao walked up to the mountain wall. Since the formation inferred that the empty area was here, Tang Ao also wanted to see what was here. With a thought from Tang Ao, the vast and boundless essence energy in his body gathered on the demon-slaying axe. As Tang Ao's essence energy gathered, the demon-slaying axe began to tremble slightly. As the demon-slaying axe trembled more and more intensely, Tang Ao could no longer infuse his primordial energy into the demon-slaying axe. Tang Ao roared and slashed out with the demon-slaying axe in his hand. It was completely different from Tang Ao's imagination of flying dust and crumbling mountain walls. When Tang Ao chopped down with his axe, Tang Ao and the other man disappeared in an instant. By the time Tang Ao reacted, Tang Ao had already arrived in a completely unfamiliar place. It was an abnormally dilapidated palace. Even though there were only some broken walls left, Tang Ao could still sense how glorious the palace must have been at its peak. At that moment, there was no one in the dilapidated palace, but Tang Ao saw many good things. These treasures were scattered randomly, as though no one had ever been here. Apart from all sorts of treasures, Tang Ao also saw some skeletons. At that moment, there was a skeleton in front of Tang Ao. This time, the skeleton was pale gold. The owner of the skeleton seemed to have experienced a fierce battle, as his entire right arm was gone. In his left hand, there was a grayish blade. Although the saber looked terrible, Tang Ao knew that it was definitely something good. This was because Tang Ao recognized that this was a weapon forged from black crow gold, and its grade was impressively at grade 2 immortal grade. Even though it was an immortal equipment, Tang Ao still wanted to say that the forging of this saber was really a failure. Because the black crow gold was a grade 6 immortal material, and a good grade 6 immortal material had been used by a terrible weapon refiner to refine a grade 2 immortal artifact saber. Although Tang Ao didn't like this saber, He was very interested in Tang Ao's black crow gold. Just now, Tang Ao used his heavenly polar eyes to examine it, and this piece of black crow gold was very good. This smith clearly knew that his level wasn't up to par, so he only used the entire piece of black crow gold to forge a saber and didn't add any other materials. Therefore, Tang Ao could remove all the inscription arrays in the saber, and this black crow gold saber would naturally become a piece of black crow gold. Even though Tang Ao didn't know what he was going to forge with black crow gold, this was a top-grade material that even someone like Tang Ao wouldn't mind having too many of. Since he came across it, he definitely had to keep it. Chapter 1873. The palace was in a complete mess. There were many corpses of cultivators and broken immortal artifacts. That's right. After entering the palace, Tang Ao saw immortal artifact grade weapons everywhere. From that, he could tell that the cultivators who fought here must have been peak-level experts. Tang Ao did not understand. Why would such a complicated array be used to hide a ruined palace? In the beginning, Tang Ao had assumed that the hidden palace was the remnant of some expert. Now, however, Tang Ao knew that the hidden palace was just a ruined palace. There was no legacy left behind by any expert. After taking a few more steps forward, Tang Ao suddenly stopped. Just now, when Tang Ao entered, he was attracted by the black crow gold. After collecting the black crow gold, Tang Ao began walking around the ruined palace. However, Tang Ao had neglected a very serious problem. That was, when he was outside the palace, Tang Ao had used an array formation to deduce that this place was a blank area that was not affected by the array formation. Moreover, due to a strange combination of factors, Tang Ao had accidentally entered this place. This place was clearly not the same as the canyon. It was easy for Tang Ao to come in. However, how was he going to get out? Tang Ao had been walking around the palace for a long time, but he had yet to find a way out. As for going back the way he came from, that was also impossible. The reason why Tang Ao had appeared in that place in the beginning was random. It was not because there was a special spatial array gate there. If he were to be trapped here and unable to get out, he would be in big trouble. Immediately, Tang Ao activated his sky polarity eyes and scanned his surroundings. Thanks to his sky polarity eyes, nearly a quarter of the palace was visible to Tang Ao. Even so, Tang Ao was still unable to find a way out of this space. This space seemed to be protected by a special dimension, completely independent of the void. After observing for a while and finding nothing, Tang Ao did not continue looking around. Instead, he began searching around the ruined palace. Tang Ao felt that this palace seemed to have been independent of the void since it was built. However, something had happened to it later on. Since it was independent of the void, the people in the palace would have to travel back and forth between the palace and the outside world. Tang Ao believed that as long as his judgment was correct, there must be a passageway connecting the palace to the outside world. Otherwise, would the experts here have to break the void every time they went in and out of the palace? That was clearly impossible. At the thought of this, Tang Ao continued to search the palace. The size of the palace was beyond Tang Ao imagination. Even in his previous life, Tang Ao had never seen such a magnificent palace. The Seven Kill sect was considered one of the top sects in the Black-Yellow continent. However, the entire Seven Kill sect was not even a quarter of the size of this hall. After walking for a long time, Tang Ao arrived in front of two stone pillars. With just a glance, Tang Ao was shocked by the material of the two stone pillars. Tang Ao was definitely not someone who had not seen the world. However, it was the first time that Tang Ao had seen a stone pillar carved with sky cloud stone. Chapter 1874. If he hadn't used his soul remembrance to confirm, Tang Ao wouldn't have believed that these two stone pillars were carved from sky cloud stone. On these two stone pillars, there were a total of 8 large words. These 8 words were Great Dream Tao Lord, live forever. Great Dream Tao Lord? Tang Ao suddenly paused and immediately thought of the 2 gray stones he had obtained before. The 2 gray stones contained 2 broken maps. When Tang Ao heard the news, as long as he passed Great Dream Tao Lord's 3rd test, he could obtain the Tao Lord's inheritance in exchange for the treasures in the gray stones. Tang Ao didn't think that he would accidentally come to Great Dream Tao Lord's Tao Palace. However, what Tang Ao didn't understand was why Great Dream Tao Lord didn't leave his inheritance ruins here since he left his palace here. Instead, he left his inheritance ruins somewhere else. Wasn't this an unnecessary move? As he thought, Tang Ao's soul remembrance wandered over the 2 stone pillars carved from sky cloud stone. When Tang Ao's soul remembrance passed over the sky cloud stone pillars, the stone pillars emitted a special fluctuation. However, Tang Ao was too engrossed in his thoughts and didn't notice. However, Tang Ao quickly paused because in front of Tang Ao, there was a large void rune. This rune was between the 2 stone pillars, and there were many cryptic runes on it. Although this was the first time Tang Ao had seen this rune, Tang Ao knew what it was. This was like a password lock. As long as the runes on it were arranged correctly, the rune could be opened. Tang Ao originally thought that the only thing left of this broken palace were the broken walls. However, Tang Ao now knew that he was wrong. The reason for that was because there was a spirit formation space hidden behind the rune. However, how to open this rune was difficult for Tang Ao. Tang Ao knew that if there were any good things in the palace, they would all be in the boundary space sealed by the runes. However, the runes were too complicated and obscure. Tang Ao felt that even his master, Yin Xiaoyao, would find it difficult to open the barrier, let alone himself. Since he couldn't open it through normal means, he could only try using brute force. Without much hesitation, Tang Ao took out the devil beheading axe and slashed at the rune floating in the air. The devil beheading axe flashed with a white light, and a terrifying power instantly exploded out. It was as if space itself would shatter under this axe. However, when this incomparably terrifying axe chopped down on this mysterious rune, Tang Ao felt the boundless power of the demon-slaying axe instantly disappear. In other words, the power of the demon-slaying axe was completely absorbed by this ancient rune. Just as Tang Ao was feeling puzzled, Tang Ao's expression suddenly changed. Because at this moment, Tang Ao suddenly felt an even more terrifying force coming from the rune. Chapter 1875. This puppet was obtained by Tang Ao from the puppet killing spell. After obtaining it, Tang Ao did not know what it could be used for, so he had been keeping it in his storage ring. However, right then, after Tang Ao had put the puppet into the groove, it fit perfectly. Then, Tang Ao realized that the horrifying power that had been attacking him had all been transferred to this puppet. All of a sudden, the aura on the puppet's body increased drastically. Within a blink of an eye, it had broken through the Yuan martial realm and reached the Sea of Souls realm. However, the puppet's aura was still increasing at a horrifying speed, showing no signs of stopping. Another moment later, the puppet's aura had broken through the Sea of Souls realm and reached the Life and Death realm. After reaching the Life and Death realm, Tang Ao could see that the puppet's aura was also increasing at a horrifying speed. Soon, it had reached the peak of Life and Death realm level 9. However, after reaching the peak of Life and Death realm level 9, the puppet's cultivation stopped increasing as well. Although it was only one step away from reaching the astral reaching realm, it had stopped there. After the horrifying power from the symbol had been absorbed by the puppet, the mysterious symbol shone brightly before slowly merging with the puppet, disappearing completely. At the same time that the runic array disappeared, a terrifying suction force was instantly emitted. Feeling that he was about to be sucked in, Tang Ao used his soul power and pulled the floating puppet into his hand. Holding the puppet in his hand, Tang Ao could still feel the horrifying aura from it. Before, Tang Ao did not think much of this puppet. But now, Tang Ao realized that this puppet was a treasure as well. The peak of life and death realm level 9 was enough to crush all the warriors in the Flying Star continent. However, before Tang Ao could get excited, the power of the puppet instantly disappeared. When he carefully observed it, he found that the power of the puppet had been sealed by the incomparably complex runes. Seeing this, Tang Ao wanted to vomit blood. However, before Tang Ao could think too much about it, Tang Ao found himself in a special space. This place was surrounded by a vast expanse of white fog, and there was only a huge white jade platform floating in the void. After Tang Ao landed on the white jade platform, a voice sounded around him. "I am Yimeng Han. I have cultivated for 18,000 years, and my title is Great Dream Tao Lord." When he heard that God King Yunxing's treasury had appeared, he came to investigate. He discovered that the demonic world's great primordial demonic god wanted to steal God King Falling Star's treasury, so he tried to stop him. After a great battle, he wanted to slay the primordial fiend Celestial, but he was ambushed by the scum of the human race, the primordial magnetic Tao Lord, and died. Before he fell, he left behind another legacy. "Whoever obtains my legacy must slay the magnetism." After hearing this voice, Tang Ao was even more puzzled. Wasn't it said that Great Dream Tao Master's relic was in the place recorded on the gray stone? The warriors who obtained it from the puppet-killing array all knew where it was. How could Great Dream Tao Master's relic appear here? If this was Great Dream Tao Master's relic, then what was the place recorded on the gray stone? Chapter 1876. Tang Ao was secretly surprised. This was enough to prove that this was the real relic of Great Dream Tao Master. Otherwise, Tang Ao's gray stone would not be able to exchange for these two animal skin maps here. Tang Ao knew that these two animal skin maps were related to the Fallen Star token. Now, combined with Great Dream Tao Master's words, Tang Ao also understood some problems. That was, the legendary Divine King realm really existed. The owner of the Fallen Star token, Divine King Yunxing, was a real Divine King realm expert. In order to compete for the inheritance, Great Dream Tao Master fought with the primordial demon god of the demon realm. In the end, when Great Dream Tao Master was about to kill the primordial demon god, Magnetism Tao Master launched a sneak attack, causing Great Dream Tao Master's death. The Tao Master realm was still an unreachable realm for the current Tang Ao. However, Tang Ao also understood that even if he cultivated to the Tao Master realm, there was still a possibility of death. However, Tang Ao was not sad or afraid. Instead, Tang Ao's heart was filled with a burning desire to fight. Martial arts cultivation was a process of survival of the fittest. Tang Ao had the courage to compete with all the geniuses. It was also at this time that a pagoda shrouded in mist appeared on the white jade platform. "If you want my inheritance, you need to climb the Great Dream Pagoda." Tang Ao did not know if Great Dream Tao Master's divine thought was here or something else. However, Tang Ao did not think much about it and looked at the pagoda. Others did not know what the Great Dream Pagoda was, but Tang Ao knew. The Great Dream Pagoda was a top treasure of the same level as Tang Ao's primordial Sacred Heaven Bow and Shinon Cauldron. Now Tang Ao had not received the inheritance of Great Dream Tao Master, but Tang Ao had some ideas about the Great Dream Pagoda. Without thinking too much, Tang Ao stepped forward and entered the Great Dream Pagoda. As soon as he entered the Great Dream Floating Pagoda, Tang Ao saw a barefooted little girl with a bun on her head. The little girl looked to be only 6 or 7 years old. She was dressed in a green robe, and her big watery eyes were filled with doubt. When Tang Ao suddenly came in, the fruit in her hand fell to the ground in fright. "Little girl, why are you here?" Tang Ao was a little puzzled. Tang Ao thought that the so-called test would be a thrilling battle. He did not expect to see this cute little girl. Seeing her timid appearance, Tang Ao really wanted to go over and hug this cute little girl. I am the spirit of the Great Dream Pagoda. I am in charge of." Perhaps it was because no one had spoken to her for a long time, or perhaps she was a little timid in front of strangers. At this moment, little Ming tugged at the corner of her clothes and spoke crisply. Because she was a little nervous, the little girl forgot what to say for a moment. However, she quickly remembered, "I am in charge of the test for everyone who wants to receive the inheritance of Great Dream Tao Master." After saying this, little Ming raised her head happily. "You are in charge of the test." Tang Ao did not know whether to laugh or cry. Tang Ao did not expect that an expert like Great Dream Tao Master would need to pass the test of a little girl to receive his inheritance. Then what are you going to test? Chapter 1877. Little sister, my name is Tang Ao. What's your name? Tang Ao's interest was piqued when he heard that it was the little girl who set up the test. If an expert like Great Dream Tao Master set up the test seriously, Tang Ao was not confident that he could pass. Just like the previous puppet killing formation, if Tang Ao did not have the 9 Dragon Emperor's Jade body, Tang Ao's situation would not be much better than other warriors. But that puppet killing formation was only the first test of Great Dream Tao Master's test. It was conceivable that if Tang Ao did not come here by accident, it would be very difficult for him to pass the 3 tests and finally get the inheritance. But now that Tang Ao was lucky to come here, Tang Ao naturally had to make full use of his advantage as a pioneer. Especially now that the person in charge of the test was just a little girl, Tang Ao smiled proudly. At this time, Tang Ao did not care about deceiving the little girl. What Tang Ao needed to do now was to hand over the inheritance of Great Dream Tao Master. In the beginning, Tang Ao only got the inheritance of Ming Di, but it played such a big role in Tang Ao's cultivation. Now, what appeared in front of Tang Ao was the inheritance of a Tao Master expert. At this time, it would be a lie to say that he was not excited. "Brother Tang Ao, my name is Little Ming. Do you have a gift for me?" After saying this, Little Ming looked at Tang Ao with her big watery eyes, full of expectation. Little Ming's words caused Tang Ao to stare blankly for a moment. Little Ming was obviously not a demon beast, so it was absolutely impossible to give her a spirit beast Dan. Moreover, what was the favorite thing of a child at this age? Although there were all kinds of things that children liked, Tang Ao was sure that this thing was absolutely liked by all children. Tang Ao opened his palm and took out a jade box from his storage ring. When Tang Ao and La Kale visited the small town at the foot of the mountain of the 7 Kills sect, this jade box was a tribute given to Tang Ao by the peddlers there. Sealed in this jade box was a superior osmanthus cake. Although it was not helpful to the cultivation of a martial artist, the taste was indeed very good. Eating sweet candy cakes was definitely something all children had in common. Tang Ao removed the seals on the jade box and opened it slowly. Then Xiaoming saw the 8 osmanthus cakes neatly placed in the jade box. The moment the jade box was opened, a refreshing fragrance came out. Xiaoming's eyes lit up as she looked at the osmanthus cakes and smelled the fragrance. Then, she looked at Tang Ao in disbelief. In Xiaoming's opinion, the things in Tang Ao's hands seemed to be very delicious. However, Xiaoming couldn't believe that there was such a delicious thing in this world. When Xiaoming followed Yi Menghan only treated Xiaoming as an artifact spirit. Because Xiaoming could also cultivate, Yi Menghan only gave Xiaoming some elixirs to eat. At most, when Yi Menghan encountered some good spirit fruits, she would let Xiaoming satisfy her cravings. However, Xiaoming had never seen such mortal food, let alone eat it. "Here, take it." Looking at Xiaoming's big, sparkling eyes, Tang Ao knew that this little girl really liked osmanthus cakes. Although Xiaoming was the artifact spirit of the Big Dream Pagoda and had lived for tens of thousands of years, Xiaoming's mind was obviously that of a 6 or 7-year-old child. After receiving the osmanthus cake from Tang Ao, Xiaoming was very happy. Chapter 1878. Hearing Xiaoming's words, Tang Ao's face darkened. Tang Ao thought to himself, "This is the inheritance of a Tao Master, but now it's settled with a box of osmanthus cake." However, Tang Ao did not make things difficult for himself. Since Xiaoming said he passed, then he passed. Although his means were not good, wisdom was also a manifestation of strength. At this moment, Tang Ao attributed his behavior to wisdom. Little sister Xiaoming, can I go directly to the top floor and get the inheritance of Tao Master Great Dream? Because things were too easy, Tang Ao asked with some uncertainty. Yes. Xiaoming nodded with her mouth full of osmanthus cake, then said vaguely, there are some simple tests on each floor above, and you can get some treasures by passing these tests. Of course, if Brother Tang Ao doesn't want to take the test, then I can directly send Brother Tang Ao to the 36th floor. Tang Ao was overjoyed. Sure enough, the inheritance of Tao Master Little Dream was in his hands. However, after hearing that there were rewards for passing each floor, Tang Ao decided to give it a try. After all, he had directly skipped the 3 tests before ascending the tower, and if he directly went to get the inheritance of Tao Master Great Dream, Tang Ao was worried that if Tao Master Great Dream left a soul behind, then it would be impossible to get the inheritance of Tao Master Great Dream. Moreover, there were treasures for passing the test on each floor, and there were still 35 floors above. Tang Ao still wanted to see what treasures he could get. Just as Tang Ao was about to go to the 2nd floor, Xiaoming waved her hand, and then 3 light balls appeared in front of Tang Ao. Tang Ao was very familiar with this light ball. Previously, after killing the puppets in the puppet boundary, he would finally get the opportunity to choose the treasures in the light ball. Brother Tang Ao, originally you could only choose one of these 3 water moonstones, but because I am responsible for the 1st floor, these 3 water moonstones are all for you. Looking at the 3 water moonstones in front of him, Tang Ao had a surreal feeling. Previously, in the puppet barrier, so many cultivators had risked their lives to obtain 2 water moonstones. Moreover, for the sake of these water moonstones, Tang Ao was later stopped by the people of Intoxicated Gold House. But now, Tang Ao actually obtained 3 water moonstones so easily. Water moonstone, as the name suggested, had the same meaning as Great Dream Tao Master. Looking at the 3 water moonstones in front of him, Tang Ao felt surreal. Among the 3 water moonstones, there was a dazzling golden stone. This stone was surrounded by a terrifyingly high temperature, as if the entire space was about to melt under this terrifying heat. Although this was the first time Tang Ao had seen this stone, Tang Ao recognized it at a glance. Among the 6 top treasures for the Netherworld Flame to evolve into the immortal Nether Flame, there was a treasure called the Sacred Sunstone. At this moment, the dazzling golden stone in the light ball was impressively a Sacred Sunstone. As for the Sacred Sunstone, Tang Ao really had no clue about it. However, Tang Ao never thought that, even though he had not obtained the Earth Fire Essence Flame, the Sacred Sunstone, which was even more precious than the Earth Fire Essence Flame, would be obtained so easily. Chapter 1879. Okay, thank you, Brother Tang Ao. Xiaoming looked very happy when she heard that Tang Ao would take her to eat delicious food. She tiptoed and kissed Tang Ao's face. Xiaoming's action made Tang Ao feel that this child was really cute. Tang Ao reached out and grabbed the 3 balls of light. The 3 balls of light turned into silver-gray water moonstones. In addition to the Holy Sunstone, the other 2 water moonstones also contained good stuff. Like the Holy Sunstone, they were both very high-grade spiritual materials. However, even with Tang Ao's eyesight, he couldn't recognize the 2 spiritual materials. Because of the existence of the 100 Herb Collection, Tang Ao basically knew about all kinds of spiritual herbs. However, the 100 Herb Collection only recorded all kinds of spiritual herbs and didn't have many records about spiritual materials. Therefore, Tang Ao couldn't recognize some of the especially high-grade spiritual materials. Getting a treasure like the Holy Sunstone in the 1st level made Tang Ao look forward to the later assessment. As a Tao Master Realm expert, Great Dream Tao Master probably had all the treasures needed for the Nether Fire to advance. Even if he didn't, after getting the Holy Sunstone, Tang Ao felt that this trip was not in vain. Moreover, if there were no accidents later, this great dream pagoda will be taken away by Tang Ao. Just like Tang Ao's primordial sacred heaven bow and Shinnon cauldron, this great dream pagoda was also a 9th grade immortal weapon. Tang Ao didn't care about immortal weapons that were too low grade, but Tang Ao would never let go of an immortal weapon of this level. After putting away the 3 water moonstones that Xiao Meng gave him, Tang Ao came to the 2nd level. It was completely different from the 1st level. The 2nd level was a jungle. As soon as Tang Ao appeared, he was surrounded by more than 10 wolves. Tang Ao didn't know what kind of wolf demonic beasts these wolves were. They were as big as bulls and had a vertical pupil on their foreheads. Just by looking at them, one could tell that these fellows were not easy to deal with. Without giving Tang Ao any time, after Tang Ao appeared, these huge wolf demons attacked Tang Ao. Their attacks were swift and violent. After a deafening roar, a demon wolf leaped up and slammed its sharp claws towards Tang Ao. Although their cultivation bases were the same as Tang Ao's, Tang Ao discovered that these guys were clearly the same as him, possessing strength that was completely different from his own cultivation base. If it was a normal martial artist at the 1st level of the Origin Realm, not to mention anything else, they would not be able to dodge that claw that was as fast as lightning. Although Tang Ao could have easily avoided the claws, Tang Ao didn't dodge. Tang Ao wanted to test the strength of these demon wolves. After all, this was only the 2nd level of the Great Dream Pagoda. If he couldn't even pass the 2nd level and needed Xiao Meng to go easy on him, Tang Ao would be too useless. With a flash of golden light, the battle Sagebone Life Soul was summoned. Due to the black jade immortal fruit given by the snow-winged spirit cat, Tang Ao's soul C recovered a little. The recovery of the soul C was accompanied by the strengthening of a life soul. Previously, the battle Sagebone Life Soul was too weak. When he used the battle Sagebone Life Soul, Tang Ao always felt weak. But now, Tang Ao felt that the battle Sagebone Life Soul was filled with explosive power. Chapter 1880. Without giving Tang Ao any time to catch his breath, the remaining wolf demons roared and charged at Tang Ao after sending Tang Ao flying. It was as though they wanted to crush Tang Ao. Seeing how arrogant these guys were, Tang Ao naturally had to teach them a lesson. If it were before, Tang Ao would not be a match for these wolf demons in terms of pure strength. But now it was different. Tang Ao opened his right hand, and a dark silver axe appeared in Tang Ao's hand. This axe had a special sense of heaviness, but it didn't have much weight in his hand. However, no matter who it was that was wielding this axe, they would all be shocked by the terrifying power of the axe. When Tang Ao brandished the demon-slaying axe, there was an ear-piercing sonic boom in the air. It was as though when Tang Ao brandished the axe, the space could no longer withstand the terrifying power of the axe. Tang Ao's eyes turned cold as his primordial chi erupted. Then, Tang Ao brandished the demon-slaying axe in his hand and swept it in front of him. Suddenly, the wind howled and dust flew everywhere. The trees in the surrounding forest began to sway under the pressure. A terrifying half-moon-shaped axe blade flew out instantly. Then, under the horrified gazes of these giant wolf demons, the half-moon-shaped axe blade completely minced them into pieces. Under this axe, everything in front of Tang Ao became a mess. At this moment, there wasn't even a standing tree or an intact rock in front of Tang Ao. After refining the demon-slaying axe, this was the first time Tang Ao used the demon-slaying axe to unleash a full-force strike. Although Tang Ao knew that the demon-slaying axe was powerful, it was only now that Tang Ao realized that the demon-slaying axe was powerful to such an extent. Such terrifying power was indeed worthy of the demon-slaying axe's name. Then, Tang Ao looked at the last giant wolf demon. Under Tang Ao's axe, only this giant wolf demon that was preparing to sneak attack from behind was still alive. After seeing Tang Ao's mighty axe strike, the giant wolf demon was really scared out of its wits by Tang Ao. Therefore, it screamed and prepared to flee into the distance. However, the corner of Tang Ao's mouth revealed a trace of a sneer. Because Tang Ao knew that this guy was just pretending to escape, he was actually waiting for him to catch up to him to launch a sneak attack. Although he knew the wolf demon's intentions, Tang Ao still chased after it without hesitation. Sure enough, when Tang Ao chased after it, the giant wolf demon suddenly turned its head, and the vertical eye on its forehead suddenly shot out a terrifying white light. This white light revealed an aura of death. If it hit a vital point, Tang Ao would definitely die. However, Tang Ao was already prepared, so the moment the giant wolf demon turned its head, Tang Ao's figure disappeared. When Tang Ao appeared again, Tang Ao had already raised the demon-slaying axe and fiercely chopped down at the giant wolf demon. Without any suspense, the wolf demon didn't understand what was going on. Tang Ao had already taken its life. After Tang Ao killed the last wolf demon, the surrounding scene quickly changed. Chapter 1881. Tang Ao was very satisfied with passing 10 levels in one go. What made Tang Ao the happiest was that after leaving the jungle-like place, Tang Ao's yuan qi and psyche were all replenished. This meant that Tang Ao hadn't used any energy in the previous battle. This made Tang Ao very happy. If this was the case, then he would be able to fight without any worries. Although Tang Ao hadn't considered his own yuan qi consumption in the previous battle, that was because Tang Ao had the 9 Dragon Emperor Jade Body's heaven-defying physique. His yuan qi recovery was very fast. Moreover, Tang Ao felt that the heaven and earth yuan qi was very abundant in this space. Therefore, Tang Ao dared to consume his yuan qi without restraint. Looking at the 27 balls of light in front of him, Tang Ao's eyes were very fervent. Tang Ao only glanced at them. Tang Ao knew that even a decisive person like him would have to face the dilemma of making a choice one day. This was because all the things in front of him were treasures. Among these 27 items, there were too many good things. At a glance, Tang Ao saw the light cluster on the far right. In this light cluster, there was a flower that looked like a glazed crystal. Around this flower, there was a burst of immortal charm. Tang Ao was very familiar with this flower. Tang Ao had thought about how to obtain this flower more than once. However, Tang Ao never expected that his first Kunlun flower would be obtained this way. That's right, the treasure in a light ball was a healing holy Kunlun flower. Although the black jade immortal fruit that Tang Ao had consumed previously was also a good thing, it was far inferior compared to the Kunlun flower. Tang Ao felt that even if this Kunlun flower couldn't completely repair his soul C and spiritual C, it could definitely heal most of his injuries. Ever since the end of the Underworld Emperor Mystic Realm, Tang Ao's Soul C and Spirit C had not fully recovered. This caused Tang Ao to be unable to collect his debt, even if he wanted to. Although a lot of time had passed, those fellows must have made some breakthroughs in their cultivation. But Tang Ao was not afraid at all. The terror of the 9 Dragons Emperor's Jade Body was not something these guys could imagine. Without any hesitation, Tang Ao grabbed the Kunlun flower. After obtaining the Kunlun flower, Tang Ao was in a good mood. To be able to obtain the Kunlun flower so easily was really a stroke of luck. Tang Ao knew that his luck this time was not small. He had accidentally come to Dao Lord Great Dream's Dao Palace and had obtained treasures like black gold, holy sunstone, and Kunlun flower. Not only that, there was also a dark silver puppet in Tang Ao's storage ring that was comparable to a peak life and death realm warrior. Although the puppet was sealed by an ancient rune, as long as the puppet was on Tang Ao's body, Tang Ao was confident that he would be able to break the seal. After taking the water moon stone with the Kunlun flower, Tang Ao looked at the other light orbs. In these light orbs, there were many things that Tang Ao did not recognize. But the things that Tang Ao recognized were all treasures among treasures. According to the rules, Tang Ao could still choose 8 treasures from these light orbs. Although Tang Ao was a little regretful that he could not take all of these things away. However, Tang Ao didn't hesitate for too long. Right now, he could only choose 8 treasures. No matter how reluctant he was, he could only choose 8 treasures. Since this was the case, why waste time? Besides these treasures, there were more than 20 levels in Great Dream Pagoda. As long as he passed the tests above, Tang Ao could still continue to obtain other treasures. Therefore, Tang Ao was very decisive and quickly picked out 8 types of treasures from the pile. This time, Tang Ao chose spiritual materials that looked very high level. Although there were some immortal weapons and high-level elixirs in these light orbs, these things were not very useful to Tang Ao. On the contrary, Tang Ao's craftsmanship was about to have a breakthrough. After Tang Ao's breakthrough, it would be the most awkward if he wanted to craft immortal weapons without spiritual materials. Therefore, Tang Ao chose high-level spiritual materials this time. He did not know what these spiritual materials were now, but it did not mean that he would not know in the future. It was just that even Tang Ao did not expect the grade of the immortal material he had obtained this time. If they were ordinary immortal materials, it was impossible for Tang Ao to not recognize them with Yun Xiaoyao's craftsmanship legacy. But now, even with Yun Xiaoyao's craftsmanship legacy, Tang Ao did not know these materials. Therefore, it was obvious how high-level these immortal materials were. It was just that Tang Ao had not thought about it in detail, so he naturally did not consider this point. Chapter 1882. Although Tang Ao rarely looked in the mirror, Tang Ao still knew that the black-clothed youth sitting opposite him looked exactly like him. Not only did they look alike, but even their life souls seemed to be the same. Tang Ao's green lotus sword soul had evolved several times to become what it was today, and the green lotus sword soul of the Tang Ao opposite him was also exactly the same as his. Is this level's test against myself? This is interesting. Tang Ao muttered to himself. This was the first time that Tang Ao had encountered such a thing in his 2 lives of cultivation. However, the black-clothed youth sitting opposite him seemed to understand what Tang Ao was thinking. Hence, he slowly got up and said to Tang Ao, "My name is Lonely Shadow. My name is Guing. My ability is a little special. I can replicate any warrior's ability. The moment you stepped onto the martial arts arena, your ability was completely replicated by me. I am very surprised by your situation. I have met warriors with the 9 dragons Emperor J body before. However, you're a little special." Tang Ao didn't care about what Lonely Shadow had said before, but after Lonely Shadow directly mentioned his 9 dragons Emperor J body constitution, Tang Ao couldn't help but care. Because the existence of the 9 dragons Emperor J body was very special. Even warriors who were much stronger than Tang Ao wouldn't be able to see through Tang Ao's 9 dragons Emperor J body constitution if they didn't have any special means. Tang Ao was sure that he had never come into contact with Lonely Shadow before. As long as it was a warrior that Tang Ao had come into contact with, Tang Ao would definitely remember the other party's aura. This meant that Lonely Shadow really knew that he had the 9 dragons Emperor J body constitution with just a glance. This kind of ability was terrifying. However, Tang Ao still had one doubt, and that was whether Lonely Shadow had really replicated all his abilities. "Let's fight. If you defeat me, you will be able to obtain the items on the top floor. However, if you lose to me, you will soon be unable to leave." After saying that, Lonely Shadow hesitated for a moment before saying, "Of course, I can also give you a choice. If you leave now, I can make the decision to give you the reward for clearing this floor. What do you think?" Solitary Shadow was definitely not a talkative person, but he had said enough today. The reason why he said so much was because Solitary Shadow had no confidence in facing Tang Ao. After Great Dream, Dao Master died. Solitary Shadow guarded the light card of the 11th floor of the Great Dream Pagoda. Although the Great Dream Pagoda had 36 levels and was said to have 36 stages, in reality, there are only 3 stages. The first test was to obtain the approval of the Great Dream Floating Pagoda's artifact spirit, Xiaomeng. The second test was to fight against an ancient desolate wolf demon of the same realm. The third test was to defeat him. As long as he defeated him, he would be able to obtain what Tao Venerate Great Dream left behind. Back then, Solitary Shadow had made an agreement with Tao Venerate Great Dream. As long as he could defeat 100 warriors who came to challenge the pagoda, he could take away what Tao Venerate Great Dream had left behind and leave the Great Dream Pagoda. In total, Tang Ao had exactly 100 challengers. He had waited for this day for far too long. So when he learned that another warrior had defeated the ancient desolate wolf demon, Solitary Shadow was very excited. However, when Tang Ao stepped onto the martial arts field and his innate secret technique successfully replicated Tang Ao's abilities, Solitary Shadow lost confidence. Chapter 1883. Therefore, Solitary Shadow decided to wait a bit longer. Although he didn't know when the next inheritor would appear, he would rather wait a bit longer. Solitary Shadow didn't know how long he had been guarding this place. Therefore, time really didn't mean anything to him. Moreover, in this enchanted space created by Great Dream Tao Venerable, Solitary Shadow was an immortal existence. Therefore, time really didn't mean anything to him. If not for this being his 100th battle, perhaps he wouldn't have been so cautious. However, this battle was too special, and Tang Ao was terrifyingly powerful. Therefore, Solitary Shadow was afraid. Fear before a battle was a great taboo for martial artists. As a peak astral-reaching martial artist, Solitary Shadow naturally knew this. Although his cultivation base had been suppressed to the same level as Tang Ao, his true cultivation base was at peak astral-reaching 9th level. In other words, just like Tang Ao, he was also a martial artist who had reached the astral-reaching realm. Compared to Solitary Shadow, Tang Ao wasn't as nervous. In other words, the current Tang Ao was a bit inflated. Make your move. I also want to see how much I can do. Unexpectedly, Solitary Shadow boasted that he could copy his abilities. Tang Ao also wanted to see how much of his abilities Solitary Shadow could copy. Hearing Tang Ao's words, Solitary Shadow bitterly smiled and said, "If I were the same as you, I would also have your confidence. Since you want to fight, let's fight." Different from Tang Ao's imagination, in this special space, Solitary Shadow could completely copy Tang Ao's abilities. He could even copy Tang Ao's immortal items. At this moment, there were only 2 differences between Tang Ao and Solitary Shadow. First, Tang Ao had the Primal Chaos 6 Light Mirror. Although Solitary Shadow also had the Primal Chaos 6 Light Mirror on his neck, it was only an ordinary accessory and didn't have the power of the mirror. After all, no matter how powerful Great Dream Tao Venerable was, he didn't have the ability to copy a Primal Chaos 6 Light Mirror. After saying that, Solitary Shadow took the initiative to attack. His first move was the 7 Slaughter Divine Wei's first sword, Wind Cloud Rustling Kill. Suddenly, the entire space was filled with a sense of desolation and decay. At this moment, it was as if the entire world had calmed down. In this world, only Guiying and Tang Ao were left. Solitary Shadow's sword had already stabbed out. It was just a simple sword, but it seemed like nothing in the world could stop this sword. However, Tang Ao had blocked it. It was also a sword that had blocked this sword, but this sword exuded a netherworld aura that was bone-chilling. Ding! After a short probing, both of them retreated. Tang Ao did not expect that not only did Guiying look exactly the same as him, but even his life spirit and martial techniques were the same. That move just now was the first move of the 7 Killing Divine Wei, Wind Cloud Slaughter. To be precise, the 7 Killing Divine Wei wasn't a sword technique manual. However, because Tang Ao used a sword, the martial arts technique Tang Ao developed with the 7 Killing Divine Wei was also a sword technique. Chapter 1884. After Tang Ao summoned the Netherworld Sword, Tang Ao saw that there was also a Netherworld Sword in Lonely Shadow's hand. All of a sudden, the space was filled with a cold and desolate Netherworld aura. In the calm space, there was a cold wind blowing. The Netherworld Sword was summoned through the Underworld Life Soul. The Underworld Life Soul was a top life soul of the 36 levels. For Solitary Shadow to be able to summon the Netherworld Sword meant that it had also replicated Tang Ao's Underworld Life Soul. This kind of power could no longer be described as afraid. In fact, Lonely Shadow was also shocked. Lonely Shadow was a peak astral-reaching realm level 9 martial artist at his peak, but he had never awakened such a powerful life spirit. He did not know what level this Netherworld life spirit was at, but he knew that this life spirit was extremely weak. Otherwise, it would be very scary. Besides the Netherworld life spirit, there was also a broken soul ocean and spirit ocean inside Lonely Shadow's body. Every martial artist had a spirit ocean, but it was Lonely Shadow's first time seeing a soul ocean. Therefore, Lonely Shadow was sure that if Tang Ao's soul ocean and spirit ocean were not broken, then Tang Ao would be the true invincible existence in the same realm. As for now, he had the same power as Tang Ao, so it was hard to say who would win. Right now, the difference between him and Tang Ao was the battle experience they had. However, Lonely Shadow felt that Tang Ao's battle experience would not be any worse than his. Moreover, because he had copied Tang Ao's power, Tang Ao was already very familiar with these martial skill life spirits. On the other hand, it was Lonely Shadow's first time using it. Although he did not feel the slightest bit awkward, he was still at a disadvantage. Mournful winds and clouds annihilation. After the previous probing, Tang Ao took the initiative to attack. The Green Lotus Sword Soul appeared behind Tang Ao instantly. It swayed in the air and turned into 7 shining green lotus great swords. As soon as the sword was unleashed, the whole world was filled with killing intent. This sword of Tang Ao's was more than a few notches stronger compared to Lone Shadow's earlier sword. Due to his talent mystic technique, although Solitary Shadow had grasped all of Tang Ao's martial technique life souls, when Solitary Shadow used Tang Ao's martial technique, it only had the form but not the essence. Lonely Shadow had no intention of taking on Tang Ao's attack head-on. However, he was shocked to discover that Tang Ao's attack seemed to have locked onto him. No matter how he dodged, he couldn't avoid Tang Ao's attack. However, Solitary Shadow did not panic. Instead, he brought out a bronze cauldron. Tang Ao was very familiar with this bronze cauldron. It was his Shinnong cauldron. Although Tang Ao's attacks were extremely sharp, in front of the Shinnong Emperor, Tang Ao's attacks couldn't even be counted as a drizzle. Tang Ao used the Shinnong cauldron to save himself many times. Towards the Shinnong cauldron's defense, Tang Ao knew it better than anyone else. Even when Tang Ao used the primordial sacred heavenly bow, he could only barely break through the Shinnong Emperor's defense. From that, it could be seen how terrifying the Shinnong cauldron's defense was. Tang Ao's extremely sharp sword aura landed on the Shinnong cauldron like raindrops. The sword aura could pierce through a level 3 origin realm monster, but in front of the Shinnong cauldron, it was too powerless. Chapter 1885. Solitary Shadow cleaved forward with his axe. Although Tang Ao wanted to continue attacking, he was forced to retreat. Solitary Shadow clearly didn't expect the axe to take down Tang Ao. After forcing Tang Ao back, Solitary Shadow immediately turned his body and began circling Tang Ao with the demon-slaying axe. Instantly, the entire space was filled with sword chi and axe blades. The ground of the martial arts practice field was in a mess because of the two of them. After the initial stage of probing each other, the more they fought, the stronger they became. Moreover, as time passed, Guing gradually became familiar with Tang Ao's martial spirit. However, It was completely different from what Solitary Shadow had imagined. Previously, Solitary Shadow believed that it was because he wasn't familiar enough with Tang Ao's life soul that he couldn't suppress Tang Ao. However, now that Solitary Shadow was completely familiar with Tang Ao's life soul, Solitary Shadow was still being suppressed by Tang Ao. However, it wasn't easy for Tang Ao to completely defeat Solitary Shadow. Although using the Shinnon Cauldron drained his psyche and primordial energy, Tang Ao used a move that required Solitary Shadow to use the Shinnon Cauldron to defend. It also drained him greatly. At that moment, Tang Ao was thinking about how to defeat Solitary Shadow. Tang Ao was all too familiar with his life soul. In his current state, even if he used the primordial sacred heavenly bow, he wouldn't be able to break through the Shinnon Emperor's defense. At most, he would be constantly drained of energy and suffer heavy injuries with Solitary Shadow. However, Tang Ao quickly thought of something. Back when he joined the 7 Kill sect, it was to learn the 7 Kill slaughter art. However, the 7 Kill slaughter art was only a cultivation technique that Fengya had derived from the 7 Kill holy way. As for Tang Ao, he was fortunate enough to learn the real 7 Kill holy way. The 7 Kill holy way was very special. It was a derivation-type cultivation technique. As Tang Ao mainly cultivated sword arts, Tang Ao's 7 Kill holy way should be derived into 7 sword Dao cultivation techniques. However, up until now, Tang Ao had only managed to deduce the first move, Wind Cloud Abrupt Kill. Thinking of this, Tang Ao suddenly understood the meaning of this test. Solitary Shadow could replicate all the life, spirit, martial skills, cultivation techniques, and secret skills that the challenger had already mastered. However, if he gained new insights in battle, Solitary Shadow would never be able to replicate them. At the thought of this, Tang Ao started to use the 7 Kills Divine Path to deduce his second sword while fighting the Lone Shadow. For a long time, Tang Ao had wanted a lightning-attributed martial technique. However, up until now, Tang Ao had yet to find a lightning-attributed martial technique that caught his eye. Since that was the case, Tang Ao could only deduce it himself. As the 7 Killing Sage Path circulated, a scene of lightning dancing in the sky appeared in Tang Ao's mind. Although Tang Ao wanted to use the 7 Slaughter Sacred Path to derive a lightning-type martial technique, Tang Ao did not need such a large-scale martial technique. In fact, many martial techniques looked extremely beautiful, but in reality, they were flashy without substance. If Tang Ao continued to deduce it in this direction, then Tang Ao would eventually obtain a martial technique that could summon lightning within 1,000 feet. Once such a martial technique was used, the commotion would be huge. However, such a martial technique would spread out the warrior's limited essence chi. Tang Ao was certain that even if this martial technique was derived, it would not be practical. Chapter 1886. This bolt of lightning focused all of the warrior's attacks on a single target. Compared to the sky full of lightning from before, the martial technique that he deduced this time was more in line with Tang Ao's requirements. However, what Tang Ao really wanted was to execute the martial technique in the form of sword art. It had to be known that the sword focused on sharpness. The sword art released by the sword would definitely be stronger than any other martial technique. As he fought with Solitary Shadow, Tang Ao secretly deduced the 7 Killing Divine Way's second sword art. Although Solitary Shadow sensed that something was amiss with Tang Ao, he did not know what Tang Ao was up to. The only difference was that Solitary Shadow was surprised to discover that Tang Ao's attacks now contained a trace of the power of lightning. However, this power of lightning was too weak. It clearly could not affect Solitary Shadow at all, as he was too familiar with his life spirit, martial techniques, and secret techniques. Tang Ao was still able to deal with Solitary Shadow's attacks calmly even when he was deducing the sword art. In Tang Ao's mind, at this moment, Tang Ao didn't know how many times he had deduced. At that moment, a lonely figure stood in Tang Ao's sea of consciousness. On closer look, this person was Tang Ao. At that moment, this figure's actions seemed to be unchanging as he stood there. This figure made the action of unsheathing his sword. However, it seemed like his sword had not been unsheathed for countless years. No one knew what would happen after the sword was unsheathed, nor did anyone know how long it would take for the sword to be unsheathed. However, slowly, bolts of lightning circled around this figure. Soon, these terrifying bolts of lightning gathered towards the sword in his hand. However, when the power of lightning gathered to an extremely terrifying degree, it stopped abruptly. Although he did not manage to deduce the final outcome, Tang Ao's heart was filled with joy. Under such a tense situation, Tang Ao had actually deduced the 7-killing divine Wei's second sword. Unlike the first sword, Tang Ao's second sword, Wind Cloud Obliteration, only had one sword, one move, and one attack. But this time, it was definitely fatal. Because it was only one move, Tang Ao named it the Thunderclap Slash. With one slash, heaven and earth would change, ghosts and gods would be shocked. At this moment, Tang Ao did not wish to continue such a boring battle. If Lonely Shadow had used another expert's life spirit martial technique, Tang Ao could have a good spar with him. However, Solitary Shadow had used Tang Ao's life soul martial technique. Before the battle even began, Solitary Shadow had already lost half the battle. Tang Ao waved his hand, and the 7 green lotus swords flashed and then merged into one. The essence on Tang Ao's body surged as he executed the wind and cloud slaughter once again. This martial technique was indeed powerful. Other than using the farmer god cauldron to block it, or using the wind cloud rustling kill, Solitary Shadow had no other way to deal with it. This time, Lonely Shadow clearly had no intention of defending. After Tang Ao used Wind Cloud Abrupt Kill, Lonely Shadow similarly used Wind Cloud Abrupt Kill. Chapter 1887. In midair, the two streaks of sword chi clashed. At the moment of collision, thousands of sword chi rolled back, bombarding the ground of the martial arts arena until it was riddled with holes. It was a mess. It was just that after this sword, Gu Ying's sword momentum was already exhausted. But the green lotus sword in Tang Ao's hand spun, and then Tang Ao sheathed his sword and stood upright. It was just that although Tang Ao sheathed his sword, Tang Ao's attack did not end. After sheathing his sword, an even more terrifying sword chi suddenly erupted from Tang Ao's body, but it disappeared in an instant. But the green lotus sword in Tang Ao's hand also became more and more terrifying. Traces of lightning converged on the green lotus sword. In an instant, the green lotus sword's aura rose to an unprecedented height. Guing was sure that he had completely replicated all of Tang Ao's life soul martial techniques. But facing this martial technique of Tang Ao's at this moment, Guing had no idea at all. Suddenly, Guing thought of an unbelievable thing. That was that this martial technique of Tang Ao's was comprehended during the battle with him just now. Although this kind of thing was somewhat fantastical, if it was explained like this, then it could barely make sense. Moreover, when Tang Ao was fighting with him just now, he also felt that there was lightning essence energy circulating on Tang Ao's body. Thinking like this, Guing suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. Although it was very hard to accept, Guing also had to admit that Tang Ao was indeed stronger than him. Facing this move of Tang Ao's, Guing felt relieved in his heart. Immediately after, his figure changed, and Guing changed back to his original appearance. This was a pale-faced youth, wearing a long white gown, forming a clear contrast with Tang Ao's black robe. After a bitter laugh, Guing suddenly formed a seal with his hand. Immediately, 9 balls of water spinning at high speed also appeared behind Guing. Water was originally an extremely soft thing, but at this moment, these 9 balls of water spinning at high speed behind Guing emitted a terrifying power. After summoning the 9 balls of water, Lonesome Shadow made the first move. This was his last exchange with Tang Ao. After this attack, either Tang Ao died or he died. This attack was already Lone Shadow's strongest attack. However, against Tang Ao, Lone Shadow truly did not have much confidence. After Solitary Shadow made his move, Tang Ao didn't do anything. However, just as Solitary Shadow's 9 water balls were about to strike Tang Ao's eyes snapped open. Immediately, Tang Ao swept out the green lotus sword in his hand. Suddenly, a terrifying huge sword chi was released from the green lotus sword. This gigantic sword chi was in the shape of a crescent moon. Lightning flashed on the sword chi, and its aura was incomparably violent. It was as if everything would be incinerated into nothingness under this sword. Gu Ying's 9 water balls were already extremely strong. Even if it was a monster at the 3rd or 4th level of the Origin Realm, they would be crushed into dregs. However, under Tang Ao's indomitable attack, Gu Ying's 9 water balls instantly shattered. After shattering Gu Ying's 9 water balls as easily as breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, Tang Ao's thunderclap landed on Gu Ying's body without any obstruction. Gu Ying didn't even have time to react before he became nothingness under that attack. Although that attack killed Gu Ying, Tang Ao could still see a trace of joy in Gu Ying's eyes. It was as if everything was freed. After Tang Ao killed Gu Ying, it was completely different from what Tang Ao imagined. Tang Ao did not see the Water Moonstone reward. Instead, a tunnel appeared in front of Tang Ao, and that tunnel seemed to lead to the top floor of the Great Dream Pagoda. Chapter 1888. However, Tang Ao didn't know if Tao Master Great Dream would have any other strange tests, so Tang Ao decided to adjust his condition before going up. An hour later, Tang Ao had almost completely recovered the Yuan Qi and Soul Remembrance he had used in the battle with Solitary Shadow. Taking a deep breath, Tang Ao stepped into the tunnel. The moment Tang Ao stepped into the tunnel, Tang Ao felt a spatial fluctuation. Tang Ao immediately understood that this was a teleportation array. When the surrounding white light disappeared, Tang Ao's feet were steady. Looking up, Tang Ao saw the number 36. Clearly, this was the 36th floor of Great Dream Pagoda. After Tang Ao arrived, he saw a middle-aged man sitting cross-legged on an auspicious cloud throne. This middle-aged man wore a crown and had a long beard. When Tang Ao arrived, this blue-robed middle-aged man opened his eyes. Although this blue-robed middle-aged man looked lifelike, Tang Ao was sure that this was just a soul remembrance. This was a Tao Master expert. It was probably beyond Tang Ao's understanding. Even though Tao Master Great Dream was just a soul remembrance, it was enough to make it hard for Tang Ao to breathe. However, seeing that there was no fear on Tang Ao's face, Meng Han retracted her aura. Immediately, Meng Han said to Tang Ao, "You're late. I've already given the inheritance to someone else." However, Tao Master Great Dream's words stunned Tang Ao. Tang Ao thought of many possibilities. He had to go through many trials to obtain the inheritance of a Tao Master expert. But now, Tang Ao knew that he was thinking too much, because when he came here, he heard Meng Han's words that made him speechless. Since the inheritance had already been given to someone else, why would he leave this inheritance behind? As if she understood Tang Ao's thoughts, Meng Han chuckled and said, "Little fellow, perhaps you don't know much about Tao Masters. Although the inheritance of a Tao Master was precious in the path of martial arts, one could only walk his own path if he wanted to reach the top. Even if I give you my inheritance and you follow my path, you can only reach the level of Tao Master in the end." Meng Han paused for a moment, then continued, "You have to know that above Tao Masters, there are still top-notch experts in the Divine King realm. If one didn't become a God King, one would still be an ant. Although you can't obtain my inheritance, you can obtain my wealth." Tang Ao agreed with Great Dream, Tao Master's words. On the path of martial arts, if one wanted to ascend to the peak, one had to carve out his own path. Otherwise, Even if he obtained the inheritance of a god king, there would come a day when he would reach the shackles. Thus, after hearing that he could obtain Imunghan's wealth, Tang Ao's eyes immediately became fervent. The collection of a Tao master expert would certainly not disappoint Tang Ao. Moreover, Tang Ao had already obtained a lot of good things from Great Dream Tao Master. None of these things were ordinary. Seeing the joy on Tang Ao's face, Great Dream Tao Master also smiled and said, "Most of the things here are from my collection, but they are all ordinary goods. The real good things are in that room. However, the things in that room belong to a friend of mine. Although he gave them to me, if he sees you holding them, he will definitely not be polite to you." Chapter 1889. Sure enough, after Tang Ao asked the question, Tao Master Great Dream laughed out loud. "Little guy, you know a lot. Although this is about the magnetism, whether you want it or not, the magnetism will definitely find you." Tao Master Great Dream's words shocked Tang Ao. Did Tao Master Great Dream already know about him and the magnetism? However, Tang Ao quickly changed his mind. If Tao Master Great Dream was here, he might be able to see through Tang Ao's 9-Dragon Emperor Jade body. However, Tao Master Great Dream was only left with a remnant soul. Obviously, he didn't have that ability. You don't have to be surprised. The lonely shadow you killed was one of the 5 core disciples of the magnetism. Although I imprisoned Lonely Shadow in the Great Dream Buddha Pagoda, the person who killed him was you, right? Tao Master Great Dream looked at Tang Ao as if he was certain that he could kill Tang Ao. Tang Ao was very surprised that Lonely Shadow was a disciple of the magnetism. However, in that situation, if he didn't kill Lonely Shadow would definitely kill him. Tang Ao had no choice. Moreover, with Tang Ao's personality, Tang Ao would never let anyone who wanted him dead go. Tang Ao wasn't bloodthirsty, but if someone wanted to kill Tang Ao would definitely kill them first. Moreover, even without Lonely Shadow, Tang Ao had obtained the inheritance of Netherworld Emperor. Tang Ao's feud with the magnetism Tao Master would be settled. Not only that, Tang Ao's 9-Dragon Emperor Jade body was also something that the magnetism Tao Master desperately wanted. Therefore, once the magnetism Tao Master found Tang Ao, the magnetism Tao Master would definitely attack Tang Ao. In the magnetism Tao Palace, tens of thousands of miles away from the Flying Star Continent, the magnetism Tao Master sat in the main seat. A group of disciples sat below and listened to the magnetism Tao lecture. Suddenly, a young man with a green face and a single horn walked in from outside the hall. "What's the matter?" Before the young man could speak, the magnetism Tao Master asked calmly. "Master, senior brother Gu Ying's soul tablet has shattered." Even though the single-horned young man was rather courageous, his voice was still trembling when he said this. Primal Magnetic Tao Lord had 5,000 disciples, and among them, there were 5 true disciples. Solitary Shadow was one of them. There were 10 inner sect disciples, and this green-faced, single-horned beast race youth was one of them. The rest were all outer sect disciples. As for the in-name disciples, there were countless of them. However, among the many disciples, only the 5 true disciples were deeply favored by Origin Magnetic Tao Venerate. But now, the soul tablet of one of the 5 true disciples had actually shattered. The shattering of the soul tablet meant complete death. Even the soul would not have the chance to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Otherwise, if an ordinary martial artist had a soul plate after dying, the soul plate would only dim and not completely shatter. After learning of Solitary Shadow's death, Origin Magnet Tao Master's face was so gloomy that it could drip water. Gu Ying's innate secret technique was very special. In the entire true martial realm, there was no one else who possessed such an innate secret technique. Therefore, Solitary Shadow was of great significance to Origin Magnet Tao Master. But now, Solitary Shadow was actually killed. How long has Solitary Shadow been missing? After calming down, Origin Magnet Dao Master asked indifferently. 16,000 years. The green-faced, single-horned beast race youth replied respectfully. Which clan is responsible for finding solitary shadow? The magnetism realm was one of the 36 martial realms in the true martial realm. There were also countless clans in the magnetism realm. In order to find solitary shadow, the magnetism realm mobilized the power of a clan. Chapter 1890. There is no need for the nine-tailed fox clan to exist anymore. You will handle this matter. After this matter is resolved, you will take over Gu Ying's position and become my fifth true disciple. You may leave. Origin Magnet waved his sleeve. When Qin Jiao heard that as long as he eradicated the nine-tailed fox clan, he would become one of the 5 true disciples, he was both happy and sad. He was happy that after becoming Origin Magnet Dao Master's true disciple, the status of the South Mountain Black Dragon clan would greatly improve in the Origin Magnet realm. Their clan would also be able to develop very quickly. He was sad that his cultivation partner was in the nine-tailed fox clan. If he eradicated the nine-tailed fox clan, disciple thanks master. Qin Jiao didn't continue thinking about it. After thanking Origin Magnet Dao Master, he hurriedly left the hall. Origin Magnet Dao Master was furious. It was necessary to eradicate the nine-tailed fox clan. This was the fate of the nine-tailed fox clan. Even if Qin Jiao didn't accept the order, he believed that there were definitely many people who were willing to do it. Putting everything else aside, the other 9 disciples who were also part of the top 10 inner disciples would definitely be willing to do it. Moreover, if the 9 of them went, the nine-tailed fox clan would definitely be exterminated. If he went, he could leave a trace of the nine-tailed fox clan's bloodline. However, Qin Jiao also knew that even though he had done his best, it was impossible for little Tanuki not to hate him. In the Origin Magnet Dao Palace, a girl to the lower right of Origin Magnet Dao Master said, "Master, do you know who killed Junior Brother Guing? Hades' remnants. I didn't expect that after so many years, the people of Hades' bloodline are still alive. Now, even Guing died in their hands." Origin Magnet Dao Master pinched his fingers and said indifferently. There was no joy or anger on his face. In the Great Dream Pagoda, Tang Ao was stunned by Great Dream Dao Master's treasures. There were a total of 6 rooms on the 36th floor of the Great Dream Pagoda. At this moment, Tang Ao opened the first room. It was filled with various grades of spirit herbs and spirit materials. In the corner of the room, there was a small mountain of spirit stones. These spirit stones were almost all high-grade and supreme-grade spirit stones. There was not a single mid-grade or low-grade spirit stone. On the other side, Tang Ao also saw the crystals. Compared to spirit stones, the number of origin crystals was a little less, but there were at least 1,000,000 of them. Of course, Tang Ao would not stand on ceremony with these things. How could he bear the hatred of a Dao Master without collecting some interest? Tang Ao did not have any other treasures on him, but he did have a top-notch storage magic treasure, the Primal Chaos 6-Light Mirror. Tang Ao's soul remembrance moved all these items into the chaotic 6-light mirror space. Although Tang Ao would find a way to put away the Great Dream Pagoda later, it was obviously not safe to leave these treasures in the Great Dream Pagoda. Therefore, Tang Ao had to transfer all these things to the chaotic hexagram mirror. At this moment, Great Dream Dao Master's soul had dissipated, so no one knew what Tang Ao had done. Just now, Great Dream Dao Master had said that Tang Ao could take as many things as he could. Since that was the case, why would Tang Ao be polite with Great Dream Dao Master? After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Tang Ao had already emptied the first room. Then, Tang Ao opened the second room. It was different from the first room. Although the second room was also a huge warehouse, the things inside were arranged very neatly. They were all arranged on the shelves. Tang Ao saw that there were elixirs on the shelves. There were all sorts of elixirs. There were talismans, spirit weapons, and all sorts of treasures. However, these treasures were all at the spirit weapon level. Tang Ao did not see a single immortal weapon. It was the same for talismans. Tang Ao did not find any immortal talismans. However, there was space in Tang Ao's chaotic hexagram mirror. Although these things were not top level, Tang Ao did not think too much about it and put them all away. Next, Tang Ao explored the third room. The things in this room made Tang Ao very satisfied. This was because there were many immortal weapons, immortal pills, and immortal talismans. Although the grade was not high, there was a terrifying amount. Tang Ao did not refuse anything. He put everything he saw into the chaotic hexagram mirror space. Seeing so many treasures, it would be a lie to say that Tang Ao was not excited. However, until now, Tang Ao still did not see any special things. Tang Ao had indeed obtained a considerable number of immortal artifacts here. However, the grades of those immortal artifacts were not high. Even though they were all between grade 1 and grade 3, Tang Ao could not find a single one above grade 3. Chapter 1891. After sweeping through the first 3 rooms, Tang Ao immediately went to the 4th room. Unlike the previous 3 rooms, the 4th room was filled with rows of bookshelves. These bookshelves were neatly arranged with ancient books and jade slips. Tang Ao scanned with his sole remembrance. Whether it was cultivation methods, martial techniques, or other books about cultivation, they were all very complete. Seeing this, Tang Ao somewhat understood what Great Dream Tao Lord had said before. If Great Dream Tao Lord had stolen these treasures from Origin Magnetic Tao Lord's treasury, it would be strange if Origin Magnetic Tao Lord didn't come looking for him after he obtained these things. Although there were many cultivation methods and martial techniques here, Tang Ao clearly didn't have the time to study them all. Therefore, Tang Ao used his sole remembrance to move all these bookshelves into his Primal Chaos 6 light mirror space. Right now, Tang Ao had only refined the first 3 layers of the Primal Chaos 6 light mirror's restrictions. Tang Ao wasn't very clear about the Primal Chaos 6 light mirror's use. However, one thing Tang Ao was very clear about was that the space inside the Primal Chaos 6 light mirror was very large. Putting these things in the Primal Chaos 6 light mirror space wouldn't be a problem, even if he put the entire Great Dream Pagoda in the Primal Chaos 6 light mirror. Whether it was cultivation method jade slips or martial techniques, Tang Ao didn't lack any of them. Therefore, after putting all the things in this room, Tang Ao went to the 5th room. In the 5th room, there were very few things. However, compared to the first 4 rooms, Tang Ao was very interested in the things in the 5th room. However, just as Tang Ao took a step forward, Tang Ao vigilantly stopped. This was because Tang Ao clearly sensed that he had touched an array. Meng Han had promised to give all these things to him. If there was an array, Meng Han would naturally tell him. In fact, Meng Han didn't mention the array in the treasury at all. However, Tang Ao quickly realized that perhaps even Meng Han didn't know there was an array in this treasury. This was because Tang Ao could see that this array had not been set up for long. If Tang Ao's judgment was correct, this array had not been set up for more than 300 years. Soon, Tang Ao found that he was too cautious. Because this was a very ordinary array, after Tang Ao took another step forward, a piece of paper suddenly appeared in front of Tang Ao. Young Master Sikongjiu, I have already picked out the things in this place, and they are not bad. Seeing this, Tang Ao almost vomited blood. He had finally found the inheritance of a Tao Master, but Great Dream Tao Master told him that his inheritance had been given to someone else, but he had left some treasures for Tang Ao. Now, when Tang Ao came to the treasury to take the treasures, he encountered such a thing. Tang Ao even suspected that this fellow called Sikong Jio didn't empty out all these things because the space in his storage spirit artifact was limited. This time, Tang Ao had guessed correctly. Other than the last room, which had a restriction, Sikong Jio had visited all 5 treasure vaults in the past. It was just that the space in Sikong Jio's storage ring was limited, so Sikong Jio did not empty out the things here. Casually throwing out a fireball, Tang Ao burned Sikong Jio's note into ashes. Then, he looked helplessly at the remaining items on the table. Chapter 1892. This gave Tang Ao the illusion that after activating this bead, a vast ocean would appear. Tang Ao was not a water-attributed martial artist. Therefore, this water spirit bead was not very useful to Tang Ao. After playing with it for a while, Tang Ao put away. At the same time, Tang Ao was secretly pondering what Sikong Jio had taken from the treasury that caused Sikong Jio to look down on a treasure like the water spirit pearl. Besides this water spirit bead, there were a few other things on the jade table. Tang Ao scanned through and saw a jade strip. After seeing this jade strip, Tang Ao's eyes immediately lit up. It was truly a case of wearing out iron shoes in fruitless searching, only to find it by chance. In his previous life, Tang Ao had been searching for the second volume of the mysterious heaven art. Even after Tang Ao had fallen, he still could not find it. This jade strip recorded the second volume of the mysterious heaven art. Although Tang Ao did not train the mysterious heaven art in this life, Tang Ao had trained the first and second volume of the mysterious heaven art in his previous life. Therefore, with just a glance at the beginning, Tang Ao was completely sure that this jade strip in front of him was the second volume of the mysterious heaven art. Tang Ao held up the second volume of the mysterious heaven art and quickly scanned it with his soul remembrance. Then, Tang Ao realized something. The reason why he was unable to reach the peak of astral reaching realm in his previous life was because of two reasons. The first was the restriction of the black-yellow continent, and the second was the incomplete martial art. Although in this life, Tang Ao had changed to train the ancient god-moving art, the rank of the mysterious heaven art was originally higher than the ancient god-moving art. Most importantly, the mysterious heaven art was very inclusive. Therefore, Tang Ao could train the mysterious heaven art at the same time as he trained the ancient god-moving art. Moreover, he would use the mysterious heaven art as the main method and the ancient god-moving art as the supplement. After obtaining the second half of the mysterious heaven skill, Tang Ao was in a good mood. Although there were many problems in Great Dream Dao Venerates Dao Palace, after obtaining the mysterious heaven method, Tang Ao felt that everything was worth it. With Tang Ao's powerful soul remembrance, after just one look, Tang Ao had already memorized the second half of the mysterious heaven technique. After that, Tang Ao put away the original copy of the mysterious heaven skill and continued to look at other things. Soon, Tang Ao discovered something interesting. It was a gauze dress that was as thin as a cicada's wing. At first, Tang Ao didn't know what it was. However, after his soul remembrance permeated it, Tang Ao was pleasantly surprised to find that it was a treasure that could change one's appearance and aura. Although the mass soul weapon that Tang Ao made before could also change one's aura and appearance, compared to the gauze dress in Tang Ao's hand, the mass soul weapon that Tang Ao made before wasn't enough. After happily putting away the gauze dress, Tang Ao saw a tortoise shell. Of course, Tang Ao understood that since this tortoise shell could appear here, it definitely wasn't a normal item. Scanning with his soul remembrance, Tang Ao was instantly overjoyed because this tortoise shell was the command flag to control the Qi Min Dun Jia formation. In other words, with this tortoise shell, Tang Ao could leave this place at any time. Before, Tang Ao was worried that he didn't know how to leave this place. He didn't expect that after coming to Great Dream Dao Venerates Dao Palace, all his problems would be solved. Chapter 1893. But this didn't affect Tang Ao. He directly swept everything in this treasury clean. Even that jade table, Tang Ao didn't let it go. After putting away everything in the fifth treasury, Tang Ao didn't look forward to the sixth treasury as much. Because long before Tang Ao, there was a fellow called Sikong Jio who came here. Moreover, Sikong Jio seemed to have left some leftovers for Tang Ao because his storage ring didn't have enough space. But in Tang Ao's opinion, even if Sikong Jio's storage ring didn't have enough space, emptying the sixth treasury shouldn't be a problem. But when Tang Ao came before the sixth treasury, Tang Ao immediately didn't think so. Because Tang Ao saw that there was a special groove on the door of the sixth treasury. Others might not know what this groove was, but Tang Ao was very clear that this groove was the dark silver puppet in Tang Ao's hand. Therefore, Tang Ao didn't hesitate and directly took out the dark silver puppet. Tang Ao's judgment was completely correct. The dark silver puppet was perfectly embedded in this groove. Then, the door of the sixth treasury slowly opened. Tang Ao saw that there was a barrier blocking the entrance of the sixth treasury. However, Tang Ao did not care about it and stepped into the barrier with a single step. Then, Tang Ao came to a misty space. This time, Tang Ao saw that although the sixth treasury hadn't been looted by Sikong Jio, there were clearly fewer things in the sixth treasury. With a glance, Tang Ao only saw two treasures floating in front of him. One of them was a clump of earthy yellow air. Seeing this clump of air, Tang Ao was first stunned. Then, Tang Ao was shocked. Tang Ao remembered what it was. This unremarkable clump of earthy yellow air was the innate Earth Source aura. There were a total of 5 types of Xiantian Qi. Although these 5 elemental Qi were not unique, they were extremely rare. This kind of innate origin energy could fuse with a martial artist's body, bringing unimaginable benefits to their cultivation. Furthermore, according to the legends, if one wanted to cultivate to the God King realm, they would need to have 5 balls of origin Qi. Although there was only one strand of innate Earth Source Qi in this place, Tang Ao knew that it was already a great fortune for him to be able to obtain it so easily. It was a heaven-defying opportunity. If Tang Ao's possession of the Nine-Dragon Emperor Jade caught the attention of Origin Magnet Dao Master, then if the fact that Tang Ao possessed the aura of innate Earth origin was leaked, then all the Dao Masters would definitely notice Tang Ao. At this moment, Tang Ao also understood why Dao Sovereign Great Dream had placed a barrier in the sixth treasury. Otherwise, after Dao Sovereign Great Dream's death, those old guys who sensed the innate Earth Source aura would immediately take it away, not to mention waiting for Tang Ao to come and take it. Tang Ao didn't expect to be able to obtain a clump of innate origin energy so easily. He was really overjoyed. Chapter 1894. However, if Tang Ao were to obtain other natural original Qi, or if Tang Ao's cultivation reached the astral reaching realm, then Tang Ao would be able to consider merging with this natural Earth original Qi. If this time Tang Ao had obtained the natural fire original Qi, then perhaps Tang Ao would have already merged with it. Unfortunately, this time Tang Ao had obtained the Earth original Qi. Although Tang Ao did not train fire element martial arts, regardless of alchemy or weapon crafting, fire was extremely important to Tang Ao. Therefore, merging with the fire original Qi would be of great help to Tang Ao. After placing a restriction on the Earth original Qi and storing it in the chaotic 6-light mirror space, Tang Ao's gaze landed on a golden scroll on the other side. This golden scroll was only half the length of a normal scroll. However, since it was placed together with the natural Earth original Qi, it was easy to tell how precious it was. Tang Ao had only glanced through the contents of the scroll, and Tang Ao was shocked. This scroll was a scroll of a divine ability. Above martial skills were immortal spells, and above immortal spells were divine abilities. This golden scroll contained a type of divine ability. Most importantly, the divine ability recorded in this scroll was not ordinary at all. It was called 1 Qi turning 3 pure ones. 1 Qi turning 3 pure ones was completely a legendary technique. If it were not for the fact that this scroll had clearly appeared in front of Tang Ao would not have believed that there was such a divine ability at all. 1 breath of mixed Yuan Qi. 1 Qi turning 3 pure ones. When Tang Ao scanned the scroll with his soul remembrance, Tang Ao saw this sentence. However, when Tang Ao's soul remembrance continued to scan the scroll, Tang Ao only felt a buzzing sound in his head. Then Tang Ao puked out a mouthful of blood. So powerful, Tang Ao hadn't even started cultivating it. He just wanted to check out this divine power, but he still suffered a backlash. Moreover, Tang Ao had only looked at a small portion of the content. But even this small portion of content was enough to make Tang Ao's soul see unable to bear it, causing Tang Ao to suffer the backlash. Tang Ao sighed in his heart. He had to find some time to study this jade slip. What Tang Ao had to do now was to put away the big dream pagoda. After Tang Ao walked out of the sixth treasury, Tang Ao shouted towards the void, "Little Sister Ming, are you there?" As soon as Tang Ao finished speaking, Xiaoming appeared in front of Tang Ao with a bulging mouth. "Big brother Tang Ao, are you looking for me?" "Xiaoming, I'm leaving this place. Do you want to go with me?" When he said this, Tang Ao felt like he was coaxing a child again. But other than that, Tang Ao really didn't know what to say. If the Big Dream Pagoda didn't have an artifact spirit like the primordial sacred heaven bow and the Shinnon cauldron, Tang Ao could just take it away. However, the Big Dream Pagoda clearly had its own consciousness, so Tang Ao could only communicate with Xiaoming. Xiaoming hesitated for a moment, then looked at Tang Ao with her big watery eyes and asked, "Big brother Tang Ao, will you take me to eat delicious food?" Tang Ao stared blankly for a moment before immediately saying, "No problem. Of course I will." Tang Ao was also somewhat speechless. As a 9th grade Immortal Artifacts artifact spirit, Little Ming was actually a little foodie. However, because Xiaoming was a little foodie, Tang Ao had succeeded so easily. Chapter 1895. Tang Ao didn't have any conditions, but on Xiaoming's side, Tang Ao could feel that Xiaoming's condition was for Tang Ao to take her to eat all kinds of delicious food. This made Tang Ao a bit speechless. Tang Ao naturally agreed to this condition. Although Tang Ao seemed to be coaxing a child, Tang Ao was not at the point of going back on his word. Tang Ao and Xiaoming signed a contract very smoothly. Then, Tang Ao felt that he also had a special feeling about the Big Dream Pagoda. Although Tang Ao hadn't refined a single layer of the Big Dream Pagoda, at this moment, Tang Ao actually had a feeling that he could control the Big Dream Pagoda. Then, a white light flashed on Tang Ao's body, and Tang Ao and Xiaoming arrived at the white jade square from before. Tang Ao saw Xiaoming wave her hand, and the Big Dream Pagoda shook with a loud bang, then turned into a pagoda-shaped imprint, imprinting it between Xiaoming's eyebrows. After Xiaoming put away the Big Dream Pagoda, Tang Ao brought Xiaoming to the ruins of the previous Dao Palace. It had to be said that the tortoise shell that Tang Ao had just obtained was very useful. In this space, all the formations and enchantments could be controlled by that tortoise shell. Moreover, Tang Ao also knew that this Chimen Duanjia formation had killing power. According to the information on the tortoise shell, Tang Ao knew that even astral-reaching realm martial artists would find it difficult to withstand the attack of the Chimen Duanjia formation. After learning this information, Tang Ao was secretly glad that he had been able to deduce this special area of the Chimen Duanjia formation, and by chance, he had even entered the Dao Palace ruins. Otherwise, no matter how powerful Tang Ao was, the current Tang Ao would definitely not be able to break this Chimen Duanjia formation and leave this place. When he arrived at the Dao Palace ruins again, Tang Ao did not leave in a hurry. Previously, Tang Ao did not completely sweep through this area. In fact, there were still some good things in this place. Just like the black crow gold that Tang Ao had obtained in the beginning, it was a very good material for refining weapons. While Xiaoming was playing by herself, Tang Ao began to search the ruins of the palace. Due to the huge storage space of the chaotic six-light mirror, Tang Ao was not worried that his storage ring would not be able to hold so many things. Thus, no matter what Tang Ao encountered along the way, he would take them all. At that moment, in Tang Ao's Primal Chaos hexagram mirror, Tang Ao had already created a special space to store items that Tang Ao couldn't use. These things were of little value to Tang Ao, but for other martial artists, it was a completely different matter. It should be known that the things that Tang Ao had placed in here were quite a few high-grade spirit weapons, and even some low-grade immortal weapons. Apart from that, there were also all kinds of low-grade manuals, broken pieces of spirit weapons, and spirit materials, which Tang Ao had randomly piled up in a corner. Half an hour later, Tang Ao had cleared out everything that caught his eye. Although the space of the primal chaos hexagram mirror was huge, Tang Ao was not one to recycle trash. Naturally, he would not take everything. Moreover, Tang Ao now knew that there were other ways to reach the Dao Palace ruins. Chapter 1896. After searching through the ruins of the Dao Palace, Tang Ao brought the water moonstone to the center of the Dao Palace square. Just like the first time, the water moonstone had become a real treasure. Tang Ao did not care much about other things. But for the Kunlun flower, Tang Ao was overjoyed. The reason why Tang Ao's cultivation could not recover was because Tang Ao's soul C and spiritual C were shattered. Once Tang Ao's spiritual C and soul C were repaired, Tang Ao would be able to recover his life and death realm level 1 cultivation as long as he went to a place with dense spiritual qi. But the damage to the spiritual C and soul C was different from other injuries. It was too difficult to recover from such injuries. But now that Tang Ao had the Kunlun flower, Tang Ao was filled with endless expectations for the Kunlun flower. Tang Ao did not leave the place with Xiao Meng immediately. Instead, he found an empty space and sat down. Xiao Meng seemed to know that Tang Ao was recovering, so she did not disturb Tang Ao. She walked around the ruins of the Dao Palace by herself. At this moment, a crystal-clear flower appeared in Tang Ao's hand. This was a very special immortal spirit herb. It was a terrifying immortal grade 8. But what was interesting was that although the Kunlun flower was known as a holy healing item, it could not be refined into elixirs. Or rather, the Kunlun flower itself was already very perfect and did not need other spirit herbs to neutralize its medicinal properties. The use of the Kunlun flower was very simple. One only needed to guide the medicinal properties of the Kunlun flower into one's body. On the empty space, Tang Ao sat down with his eyes closed. In the 100 herb collection, the description of the Kunlun flower was very clear. To put it simply, there was no injury that the Kunlun flower could not heal. But although the use of the Kunlun flower was simple, it was not so easy to fully unleash the medicinal properties of the Kunlun flower. As Tang Ao used his cultivation method, the essence of the Kunlun flower was guided into his body by Tang Ao. Once the essence of the Kunlun flower entered Tang Ao's body, it immediately turned into thousands of thin strands that wandered in Tang Ao's body. Some of the hidden injuries on Tang Ao's body were also gradually healed by the Kunlun flower. Not long after, the medicinal properties of the Kunlun flower reached Tang Ao's spiritual ocean. Then, Tang Ao was surprised to see that Tang Ao's spiritual ocean that he had been helpless with the Kunlun flower recover at a visible speed. Under the Kunlun flower, Tang's spiritual sea, the Kunlun spiritual sea that was healed. Tang Ao felt waves of aching, itching, pain, and numbness. The potency of the Kunlun flower was far beyond Tang Ao's imagination, and Tang Ao's 9 Dragons Emperor's Jade Body seemed to be able to stimulate all the potency of the Kunlun flower. Therefore, when the potency of the Kunlun flower was channeled into Tang Ao's body, there was no waste at all. Soon, Tang Ao heard a cracking sound coming from his spiritual sea. Of course, this sound wasn't the sound of his spiritual sea shattering. Instead, the shattered spiritual sea had completely fused together and was restored to its original state. At this moment, there were no words that could express Tang Ao's feelings. In fact, after Tang Ao's spiritual sea recovered, it meant that his cultivation could be restored. As long as he left this place, Tang Ao would soon be able to regain his first level of life and death realm cultivation. Chapter 1897. Seeing this scene, Tang Ao was stunned. If it was any other time, Tang Ao would have been tortured to death by the soul sea, but at this moment, Tang Ao didn't feel anything. Soon, Tang Ao saw that all the melted fragments had fused together. Not long after, a powerful soul sea appeared again. Feeling the soul sea filled with soul remembrance, Tang Ao was ecstatic. At this time, Tang Ao was 90% sure that he could refine the 3 treasure blood lotus pill for blood scar. Tang Ao really didn't expect that the Kunlun flower would be so heaven-defying. If he knew that his injury could be healed with only 1 Kunlun flower, Tang Ao naturally wouldn't have wasted so much time. After repairing the injury in Tang Ao's body, the medicinal essence of the Kunlun flower was completely exhausted and turned into powder in Tang Ao's hand. At this moment, Tang Ao felt relaxed all over. It was as if a person who had been carrying a heavy load suddenly unloaded it and drank a mouthful of ice water. Xiaoming also felt the change in Tang Ao's body. After seeing Tang Ao get up, Xiaoming walked over with a black piece of porcelain in her hand. "Sister Xiaoming, what is this?" Tang Ao really couldn't recognize the piece of porcelain in Xiaoming's hand. Although Tang Ao could feel a weak spiritual power fluctuation from the porcelain, from this spiritual power fluctuation, it was obviously not a good thing. This is used by the barbarians to record cultivation methods. This piece of porcelain is called Black Emperor porcelain. Generally, only very top cultivation methods and martial skills are qualified to be recorded with Black Emperor porcelain. Xiaoming had followed Great Dream Dao Master before, so her knowledge was naturally not comparable to that of Tang Ao. Hearing what little Meng said, Tang Ao was slightly surprised, because Tang Ao didn't know about these things at all. Hearing what little Meng said, Tang Ao felt that there might be treasures in this place, but he didn't know enough, so he couldn't recognize them. Taking the Black Emperor porcelain from Xiaoming's hands, Tang Ao scanned it with his soul remembrance, and indeed found that this porcelain was special. This piece of porcelain was sealed with layers of restrictions. A barbarian martial artist would only need to use a drop of blood essence to cut through the layers of restrictions. However, Tang Ao wasn't a barbarian martial artist, so if Tang Ao wanted to see what was hidden in the Black Emperor porcelain, he could only use the most common method of soul remembrance to break through the layers of restrictions. However, after seeing the layers of seals within the Black Emperor porcelain, Tang Ao temporarily gave up on this idea. It was already quite late. There was still a little more than a day before the 9-color deer auction would begin. Although Tang Ao was extremely fast, Tang Ao still prepared to leave. With the tortoise shell controlling the spatial barrier, Tang Ao easily left the ruins of the Dao Palace. Soon after, Tang Ao brought Xiaoming to the cottage by the small lake. Lu Yu was slightly surprised to see Tang Ao bring back a 6- or 7-year-old girl. However, Xiaoming didn't look at Lu Yu. Instead, she looked at the sleeping snow-winged spirit cat. Because she felt Tang Ao's aura from the snow-winged spirit cat, Xiaoming walked over boldly and rubbed its head. Chapter 1898. Hearing that Lu Yu could recognize the spirit of the fairy weapon, Tang Ao was a little surprised. After thinking for a moment, Tang Ao asked, "Sister Lu Yu, did you also accidentally enter the Flying Star continent from another plane?" In fact, Tang Ao should have known that no matter how talented one was in the Flying Star continent, the development of alchemy was also very slow due to the limitation of the development of martial arts in the Flying Star continent. Therefore, it was impossible for the native alchemists in the Flying Star continent to reach Lu Yu's level in alchemy. When Tang Ao asked Lu Yu this question, Lu Yu naturally knew that Tang Ao was in the same situation as her. Lu Yu also asked, "Which martial arts world are you from?" Lu Yu was a little cautious when asking this question, because some martial artists in the martial arts world were completely hostile to each other. If the martial arts world where Tang Ao was in and the martial arts world where Lu Yu was in were hostile, it would be very troublesome. Moreover, with Tang Ao's alchemy skills, Lu Yu felt that the martial arts world where Tang Ao was in was certainly not an ordinary one. Among the many martial arts worlds, it was common knowledge that the four martial arts worlds with many alchemists were all hostile to each other. However, to Lu Yu's surprise, Tang Ao shook his head. The martial arts world you mentioned should be the plane of the true martial realm, right? I have never been to the high-level plane of the true martial realm. The place where I am in is called the Black-Yellow Continent. It is said that a long time ago, it was also one of the many martial arts worlds of the true martial realm. It was called the Black-Yellow World. After hearing Tang Ao's words, Lu Yu completely believed him, because Tang Ao really didn't say anything. Many years ago, there was indeed a martial arts world called the Black-Yellow World. There were a total of 36 martial arts worlds in the true martial realm. Each martial artist's realm master was a powerhouse at the celestial muddy realm or even higher. Moreover, as long as a powerhouse at the celestial muddy realm appeared in a plane, it was possible for that plane to become one of the 36 realms of the true martial realm. This was because battles often broke out in the 36 realms of the true martial world. So, it could be said that it was a common thing for the planes to be destroyed. But as time went by, except for a few martial realms with Dao masters, the strength of the other martial realms was not very different. So although there were constant frictions between them, it was rare for a martial realm to be destroyed at every turn. After a short conversation with Lu Yu, Tang Ao had a better understanding of the realm of true force. Then, Tang Ao told Lu Yu about his plan to leave this place. Although Lu Yu was an yin-yang realm expert at his peak, he was just like Shi Yin. In this place, the immortal spiritual energy within Lu Yu's body had completely dissipated. Unlike everyone else, Xuehin cultivated blood qi. He didn't rely on yuan qi at all. Instead, he relied on spirit qi. As long as there was enough blood qi and he continued to absorb and refine blood qi, Xuehin would be able to continuously increase his cultivation in this place without any restrictions. Perhaps God King Fallen Star hadn't considered this situation when he had set up the barrier. Of course, not only Xuehin, but also Xue Vulture. Therefore, if he allowed Xue Vulture's cultivation to recover to a certain extent in advance, they would be in great danger. Of course, if it didn't work, they could still hide here together. They could even lure Xue Vulture here and use the Chiman Dunjia formation to kill him. Chapter 1899. If you want to concoct the 3 treasure blood lotus pellet, I can join hands with you. This way, the success rate will increase to at least 99%. Lu Yu's proposal was naturally something that Tang Ao readily agreed to. After all, Tang Ao only had 1 3 treasure blood lotus pellet, which meant that Tang Ao would only have 1 chance to concoct the pellet. If the pellet concoction this time failed, then Tang Ao would have to think of other ways to leave the Flying Star Continent. Up until now, Tang Ao only knew of 2 ways to leave the Flying Star Continent. One way was to shatter the void when Blood Scar was at the 9th level of Astral Reaching Realm, and then leave with everyone. The other way was to use the space-cleaving spell that he had obtained from Luo Yunshang. This trip to Dao, Lord Great Dream's palace, could be said to have satisfied Tang Ao quite a bit. However, there was still a trace of regret, which was that Tang Ao did not find the space-cleaving spell in Dao, Lord Great Dream's palace. Tang Ao felt that there should be a space-cleaving spell in Dao, Lord Great Dream's 5th treasury. Unfortunately, the 5th treasury had already been looted by Sikong Jiao. I will cultivate here for a while, then set off for Evergreen Market to participate in the 9-Color Deer Chamber of Commerce's 100-year celebration. I will leave Blood Scar in your care. This time, Blood Scar's yuan qi had clearly been greatly damaged. Even now, although his life was not in danger, there was no sign of him waking up. After leaving some yuan crystals for Lu Yu, Tang Ao went to the open space outside the thatched hut. Now that Tang Ao's internal injuries had completely recovered, Tang Ao also wanted to try and see how far he could cultivate in this place using yuan crystals. Now that Tang Ao had more than 2 million yuan crystals, Tang Ao could finally cultivate to his heart's content. Pieces of yuan crystals were placed around by Tang Ao. Soon, these yuan crystals piled up like a small mountain around Tang Ao. With so many yuan crystals, Tang Ao stopped what he was doing. After that, Tang Ao revolved his skill and started cultivating. After Tang Ao started cultivating, the yuan qi within the crystals was drawn out by Tang Ao. Then, the yuan qi poured into Tang Ao's body. However, no matter how violent this vital energy was, it was like a drop in the bucket for Tang Ao's enormous spiritual sea. After cultivating with so many multiple energy crystals, the effect was immediate. Tang Ao's cultivation level rose sharply in an instant, and the terror of the 9 dragons Emperor's Jade Body was undoubtedly revealed at this moment. 2nd level of the Origin Realm, 3rd level, 5th level, 7th level. Very quickly, Tang Ao's cultivation reached the peak of the 9th level of the Origin Realm. However, at that instant, Tang Ao still did not feel any bottleneck. So, Tang Ao was also endlessly absorbing the origin energy within the origin crystals. As Tang Ao absorbed and refined it, the essence energy in the essence crystal was rapidly depleted by Tang Ao. Soon, it shattered into dregs. However, Tang Ao did not stop. He continued to charge upwards. This time, Tang Ao was truly delighted in his heart. When a Netherworld Emperor's secret realm ended and Tang Ao was injured by everyone, Tang Ao's cultivation had never been this carefree. Thinking like that, Tang Ao's body trembled. Tang Ao had officially reached the Sea of Soul's realm. After Tang Ao reached the Sea of Soul's realm, the 100 crystals around Tang Ao were also completely consumed by Tang Ao. Although there were still 1 million crystals in Tang Ao's storage ring, Tang Ao did not continue to use them to cultivate. This was because Tang Ao knew that even if he used up another 1 million crystals, it would not change much. Although the existence of origin crystals allowed the martial artists on the Flying Star continent to cultivate to a higher level, Tang Ao also discovered that origin crystals still had a lot of drawbacks. The number of origin crystals was limited. Moreover, the essence chi contained within origin crystals could not be completely absorbed by martial artists. Most of it would leak out. Therefore, on the surface, using origin crystals to cultivate didn't seem to have any restrictions. In reality, the number of origin crystals was the biggest restriction. The utilization of origin crystals was also a headache. Feeling the surging essence chi in his body, Tang Ao felt that if he met Shue Vulture again, Tang Ao would be able to kill him. Tang Ao did not believe that Shue Vulture could also reach the Sea of Soul's realm in such a short period of time. After the breakthrough, Tang Ao was in a good mood. After informing Lu Yu, Tang Ao, the Snow-Winged Spirit Cat, and Xiao Meng went to Evergreen Market. Chapter 1900. Looking at the crowd, not far away, Tang Ao had a thought, and the dreamy muslin robe on his body changed. Then, Tang Ao turned into a white-faced scholar with a jade crown on his head and a folding fan in his hand. Next to Tang Ao, the Snow-Winged Spirit Cat had also turned into a small white tiger with wings, and Xiao Meng was riding on the Snow-Winged Spirit Cat. After getting closer, Tang Ao felt a bit strange. Tang Ao saw that this group of people were all very young, and they all had an air of arrogance between their brows. Which force are these warriors from? Tang Ao muttered in his heart. He did not understand. However, Tang Ao had to admit that these young men and women did indeed have the qualifications to be arrogant. Tang Ao saw that the lowest level of cultivation in this group of warriors was at the 3rd level of the Origin Martial Realm. Although there were already a lot of warriors at the 3rd level of the Origin Martial Realm on the Flying Star continent, to be able to reach the 3rd level of the Origin Martial Realm at this age was enough to show that their martial arts talent was extraordinary. Moreover, This person had the lowest level of cultivation. The one with the highest level of cultivation was a one-eyed warrior with a scar on his eye. This person's cultivation had actually reached the 7th level of the origin martial realm. After Shuejiao, he was the warrior with the highest level of cultivation that Tang Ao had seen on the Flying Star Continent. Of course, with Tang Ao's current cultivation of the Spirit Sea realm, this one-eyed warrior could not pose any threat to Tang Ao at all. After Tang Ao walked over, this group of people also noticed Tang Ao. However, when they saw that Tang Ao actually dared to move around in this area by himself, they were a bit surprised. One had to know that this was already the depths of the central area of the Blood Wasteland, and it was not far from the deepest part of the Blood Wasteland. From time to time, extremely powerful demonic beasts would appear in this area. But Tang Ao and his beast had been moving around here for an unknown amount of time, and it seemed that nothing had happened. I got lost while training in the Blood Wasteland. May I ask which direction is the Evergreen Market? Tang Ao guessed that the Bloodscar must have used the Bloodscar escape this time, because both of their lives were hanging by a thread. As a result, even though Tang Ao had recovered his Spirit Sea realm cultivation, Tang Ao still did not know the correct direction of the Evergreen Market. Hearing Tang Ao asking about the Evergreen Market, a lot of these young men looked at him with disdain. He originally thought that since Tang Ao was able to move around in this area, he must be an expert with extraordinary courage and insight. But now it seems that Tang Ao was just a silk pants disciple who entered this place by accident. Although Tang Ao had the powerful cultivation of the Spirit Sea realm, the cultivation Tang Ao displayed was only the first level of the origin martial realm. The first level of the origin martial realm was actually not bad in the current Flying Star Continent, but compared to these young men and women who came from who knew where, there was a huge difference. Another point was that the Evergreen Market was built in the outermost area of the Blood Wasteland. Only those opportunistic chambers of commerce and weak warriors with no ability would stay in the Evergreen Market. This was the evaluation of these people for the Evergreen Market. As for Shun Qinshi's claim that the Evergreen Market was the last barrier of the Flying Star Continent warriors in the Blood Wasteland, and that it was the place where all the warriors in the Blood Wasteland rested, these people snorted. Mayan looked at Tang Ao, then pointed in a direction and said, "Go straight in this direction. If you're fast, you can reach the Evergreen Market in 3 days. If you're unlucky and encounter some powerful demonic beasts, then it will be hard to say." Chapter 1901. After hearing Mayan's words, Tang Ao prepared to thank him and leave. But before Tang Ao left, the third-level origin realm martial artist in the group said, "Instructor Mayan, since we're going to leave here in half a day and go to the Evergreen Market Square to participate in the 9-Color Deer Trading Company's 100-year celebration, why don't we let him go with us? The Flying Spirit Boat is spacious anyways. It doesn't matter if one more person sits." Xiao Yun's words made Mayan's face reveal a rare expression of gratification. They came from the Sky Star Institution. These young men and women had outstanding martial talent, and normally they were full of arrogance. This kind of attitude was absolutely not what a true martial expert should have. Although Mayan looked fierce on the outside, in reality, he was a rather modest person. He didn't expect his own students to be like him, but Mayan really disliked the arrogant nature of the Sky Star Institution's disciples. Mayan felt that Xiao Yun's words were correct, but others didn't think so. Martial artists who could enter the Sky Star Institution to study were absolutely monstrous in the entire Flying Star Continent. The Sky Star Institution was located in the extremely cold eastern region of the Flying Star Continent. Even the 8 overlord powers that ruled the Flying Star Continent were too far away to manage the Sky Star Institution. Also, some people knew that the Sky Star Institution's power had already surpassed the 8 overlord powers. It was just that the Sky Star Institution stood aloof from worldly affairs and unceasingly sent geniuses to the Flying Star Continent, so no one had any thoughts about the Sky Star Institution. At that instant, Xiao Yun's words caused many people's dissatisfaction, but they didn't immediately show it. It was because they could tell that instructor Su Mayan admired Xiao Yun's suggestion. If they refuted it now, they would only be looking for trouble. After all, everyone still had a trial. Since Xiao Yun dared to invite a weak martial artist like Tang Ao, he would suffer in a bit. Originally, Tang Ao wanted to refuse Xiao Yun's invitation, but after seeing the disdainful gazes, Tang Ao immediately agreed. Tang Ao also wanted to see if these guys had the ability to overturn rivers and seas. A mere origin realm cultivator dared to be so arrogant? Thank you, junior brother. I am Tang Tian. How do I address you? Although Xiao Yun's cultivation was higher than Tang Ao's on the surface, he didn't think much of Tang Ao calling him junior brother. Instead, he smiled indifferently and said rather modestly, Senior brother Tang Tian, I'm Xiao Yun, a disciple of the Sky Star Institution. When Xiao Yun mentioned the Sky Star Academy, Xiao Yun didn't think much of it, and Tang Ao was only slightly puzzled. However, the people around them all stood up proudly. Seeing this scene, Tang Ao secretly laughed in his heart. Could it be that this Sky Star Academy is a force that's more prominent than the 8 overlord forces of the Flying Star Continent? Otherwise, how could the disciples of the Heavenly Star Academy be so arrogant? Tang Ao noticed that there were a total of 36 disciples of the Heavenly Star Academy in this team. Adding Sima Yin and the black-clothed, middle-aged martial artist who didn't like to talk, there were a total of 38 people. Chapter 1902. After Sima finished speaking, he left with Li Jiao, who was at the back of the group. Tang Ao saw that although Li Jiao didn't speak much, and even after Tang Ao arrived at the Sky Star Academy's group, Li Jiao didn't say a single word. Li Jiao's cultivation was extremely strong, reaching the peak of the 6th level of the Origin Martial Realm. If Lu Chuanjia hadn't broken through yet, then Li Jiao would have the same cultivation as Lu Chuanjia. Looking at it now, Lu Chuanjia, the strongest person in the Flying Star Continent, might not be the strongest. After Sima and Li Jiao left, the students of the Sky Star Academy quickly started forming groups. However, because of him, Xiao Yun seemed to have encountered some trouble. Xiao Yun was originally in a group with 4 other people, but now 3 of the other 4 were not willing to bring Tang Ao. Senior Murong, although Tang Tian's cultivation is a bit low, as long as he follows us, there shouldn't be any problems bringing him along, right? The one who spoke was a 17 or 18-year-old girl. Her cultivation was a bit higher than Xiao Yun's, and she was currently at the early stage of the 4th level of the Origin Martial Realm. In the group, only she and Xiao Yun were willing to bring Tang Ao. The other 3 were against it. Murong Zhan glanced at Tang Ao, then said, Right now, we are training in the 4th area of the Blood Wasteland. It is very dangerous. The more people there are, the more dangerous it is. A 1st level of the Origin Martial Realm in the 2nd and 3rd areas is already difficult, let alone here. Murong Zhan's words were very clear. Tang Ao's cultivation was too low, so he wouldn't bring Tang Ao. There was another male and female in the group. The gazes they used to look at Tang Ao were also filled with disdain. It was as if they were mocking Tang Ao, who was merely at the 1st level of the Origin Martial Realm, for daring to come to the 4th area. In this period of time, the martial artists of the Flying Star Continent had divided the Blood Wasteland according to the degree of danger. The Evergreen Market was located in the 1st area. The 1st area had many strongholds, and it also had the Evergreen Market as a solid barrier. So, at the current stage, the 1st area could be said to be very safe. Going deeper into the Evergreen Market, they came to the 2nd and 3rd areas. The fortress of the Liu family manor was located at the junction of the 2nd and 3rd regions. The region that Tang Ao was currently in was the 4th region of the Scarlet Wasteland. If he continued deeper, he would reach the 5th region of the Scarlet Wasteland. However, the 5th area was still a forbidden area for the martial artists of the Flying Star Continent. Not long ago, an exploration team led by a 6th-level Origin Martial Realm martial artist from the Liu family's manor had disappeared from the 5th area. Junior brother Xiao Yun, since you insist on forming a team with this Tang Tian, why don't you form a team with Tang Tian alone? Half a day later, you can gather at the location designated by teacher Si Mayan. This time, it was Ma Qianqian who spoke. She was the other female martial artist in the team apart from Yisu. Yisu and Xiao Yun both agreed to Tang Ao joining their group. But Ma Qianqian felt disdain towards Tang Ao's cultivation of the first level of the origin realm. After Ma Qianqian finished speaking, Murong Zhan did not say anything. Duan Rue, who was at the side, said, Junior Sister Ma is right, but if you want to form a team with this Tang Tian, you can go by yourself. Don't involve Junior Sister Yisu. Chapter 1903. Without waiting for Tang Ao to finish, Xiao Yun said without hesitation, What are you talking about? Since it's like this, I'll team up with you. Although Xiao Yun's cultivation was not high, he kept his words. Since he said he would team up with Tang Ao, he naturally would not go back on his words. However, if it was only him and Yisu, the fourth region would be very dangerous. Therefore, Xiao Yun did not think of inviting Yisu. However, even though Xiao Yun did not invite Yisu, Yisu came without an invitation. Since it's like this, the three of us will move together. Let's go. Compared to Xiao Yun, Yisu was even more decisive. He did not like Murong Zhan and the others' arrogant attitude. Yisu was very disgusted by them. After saying that, Yisu pulled Xiao Yun and walked in the opposite direction of Murong Zhan and the others. Tang Ao secretly felt that it was interesting and quickly followed. At the same time, Tang Ao could see that although Xiao Yun was stupid, he was a good person. He was sincere and enthusiastic. Yisu clearly liked him. However, perhaps because he was too stupid, Xiao Yun did not seem to know. Compared to Xiao Yun, Yisu was very smart. After bringing Tang Ao and Xiao Yun and running for a while, Yisu helplessly smiled and said, These guys are too arrogant. They feel that they are a cut above others. However, it's quite dangerous for the three of us to move around here, so we have to be careful. After speaking, Yisu looked at Tang Ao and Xiao Yun with a serious expression. With Yisu's cultivation of the fourth level of the origin martial realm, even in the entire Facian continent, he could be ranked among the top experts. In addition, Yisu was so young, his martial arts talent was very terrifying. Sister Yisu, I've implicated you this time. Xiao Yun was a person who would do what he said. Since he said he would bring Tang Ao to the Evergreen Market Square, Xiao Yun naturally would do what he said. However, Xiao Yun also knew that with his cultivation, it was too difficult for him to stay here. Right now, even if Yisu joined them, the three of them would still be in a very dangerous situation. So, Xiao Yun's heart was full of guilt. As Xiao Yun spoke, Yisu raised his hand and rapped Xiao Yun on the head. What are you talking about? We should be careful. If others can train here, why can't we? In that area, basically all the Origin Realm monstrous beasts were at the 3rd level to the 5th level of the Origin Realm. There were even some monstrous beasts at the 6th level of the Origin Realm. Even if we were together with Murong Zhan and the others, if we meet a monstrous beast at the 6th level of the Origin Realm, we will still not be able to defeat it. As long as we don't meet a monster at the 6th level of the Origin Realm, it won't be a problem for us to escape. So, what's the difference between teaming up with Murong Zhan and the others? Tang Ao could tell that Yisu was consoling Xiao Yun. Clearly, Yisu was worried that Xiao Yun would blame himself too much and affect the later trials. After listening to Yisu's words, Xiao Yun nodded his head. In any case, he knew that he didn't need to use his brain when he was with Yisu. As long as he listened to Yisu, he wouldn't suffer any losses. Looking at this pair of clowns, Tang Ao secretly felt that it was interesting. Chapter 1904. Most importantly, it was at the 6th level of the Origin Martial Realm, but it could only take a beating in front of Xiaomeng. Therefore, it could only carry Xiaomeng. In fact, Xiaomeng's cultivation was even higher than Tang Ao's. Tang Ao was only at the 1st level of the Sea of Souls realm, but Xiaoming was half a step into the life and death realm. Let me introduce you guys. This is my sister, Tang Xiaoming, and this is my spirit pet, Shuiyu. We ran into some things in the Blood Wasteland, so we came here. Other people were very careful, but Tang Ao was very casual. Just then, Tang Ao used his soul remembrance to observe. There were quite a few beasts at the 3rd level to the 5th level of the Origin Martial Realm. There were even a few at the 6th level of the Origin Martial Realm. There was not a single beast above the 6th level of the Origin Martial Realm. If it were only beasts of this level, there was no need for Tang Ao to do anything. The snow-winged spirit cat alone could take care of them. Even if there were beasts that the snow-winged spirit cat could not beat, there was still Tang Ao and Xiaoming to take care of them. Such a cute little sister. This sour plum candy is for you. Yisu looked at the doll like Xiaoming and liked her a lot. She took out 2 sour plum candies from her storage ring and gave them to Xiaoming. Xiaoming's big eyes froze for a second. Then she asked, "Sister, is this candy delicious?" Xiaoming had been with Meng Han before, so she had never seen these things before, let alone eat them. But now, Xiaoming saw that the sour plum candy was crystal clear and seemed very delicious. Try one and you'll know. Yisu was also amused by Xiaoming's cute look. After Xiaoming ate a sour plum candy, she had a sweet and sour feeling. Immediately, Xiaoming said happily, "Sister Yisu, don't worry. My brother Tang Ao is very powerful. With him here, you guys won't be in danger." Tang Ao was a bit speechless. Kids were too easy to deal with. He only gave her 2 sour plum candies, and she sold them out. Although Tang Ao was also ready to explain to them that Tang Tian was his alias, before Tang Ao could say it, Little Ming had already said it. Tang Ao, Xiao Yun and Yi Su asked in confusion. Tang Ao smiled awkwardly and said, "Because of some reasons, I temporarily used a fake name, Tang Ao. My real name is Tang Ao, and this is my real face." After saying that, Tang Ao's body transformed, and he returned to his original appearance. When Yi Su and Xiao Yun saw that, Tang Ao returned to his original appearance. However, because the Sky Star Academy was relatively isolated, neither of them had any impression of Tang Ao. They had no idea that Tang Ao, who was praised by the Alchemy Guild as the best alchemist on the Flying Star continent not long ago, was standing right in front of them. Both Yi Su and Yi Xiao did not mind that Tang Ao used an alias. Since Tang Ao could be honest with them, it could be seen that Tang Ao was not a bad person. The reason why he changed his appearance must be because he had some difficulties. After a simple exchange, under Yi Su's lead, Tang Ao and the other 3 also nervously walked through this area. Or rather, only Yi Su and Xiao Yun were nervous, while Tang Ao and Xiaoming were still very casually talking. Chapter 1905. Asterisk AO. Asterisk. Just as the 4 of them were carefully walking through the forest, rustling sounds suddenly rang out. Following the howl of wolves, Tang Ao and the others were surrounded by a pack of wolves. These are iron bone wolves. Be careful. Although Xiao Yun was a bit dumb normally, when he met danger, he immediately stood out bravely. Seeing Xiao Yun stand out and protect him, Yisu was clearly a bit happy. Although her cultivation was stronger than Xiao Yun's, which girl didn't want someone to protect them? Although Xiao Yun was a blockhead. On that point, Yisu felt that Xiao Yun was very responsible. He was very responsible, and it was very good. The cultivation of the iron bone wolves were not very high. Basically, they were in the 2nd level of the Origin Realm or the 3rd level of the Origin Realm. It was also because their strength was low that the iron bone wolves gathered together to hunt. Although their cultivation was not high, there were a lot of iron bone wolves. There were 13 of them. The iron bone wolves had the nickname of Copperhead and Iron Tail. At that instant, being surrounded by 13 iron bone wolves, Xiao Yun was a bit nervous. Not only Xiao Yun. Although Yi Su had the cultivation of the 4th level of the Origin Realm, Yi Su was an alchemist, and he was not very suited for battle. The reason why Murong Zhan and the others dared to mock Xiao Yun and did their best to keep Yi Su was because Yi Su was an alchemist. Especially since half a year ago, Yi Su's alchemy skills broke through to the level of a 9-star alchemist. In the entire Skystar Institution, Yi Su had quite a bit of fame. However, what made Yi Su confused was that after breaking through to the level of a 9-star alchemist, Yi Su had a clearer understanding of the Tao of alchemy. However, Yi Su did not know how to continue to raise his alchemy skills. Yi Su was very clear that 9-star alchemist was not the end of alchemy. It could even be said that it was only the beginning of alchemy. However, although there were quite a few alchemists in the Flying Star continent, there were not many peak-level alchemists. A 9-star alchemist and above had never appeared before. So, even if Yi Su wanted to learn higher-level alchemy skills, he had no way. Big brother Tang Ao, junior sister Yi Su, be careful. Xiao Yun's weapon was a long spear. His long spear was a second-grade spiritual weapon. In the Flying Star continent, such a weapon was not bad. However, a mere second-grade spiritual weapon naturally couldn't enter Tang Ao's eyes. Tang Ao felt that he was fated to meet these two people, so Tang Ao's heart was moved. Roar! After a howl, a peak of the 3rd level of the Origin Realm, Ironbone Wolf, rushed toward Xiao Yun. The spear in Xiao Yun's hand shook. Then he stepped forward, and the spear in his hand fiercely stabbed towards the Ironbone Wolf. Although Xiao Yun's body looked light, the attack power of this spear was not weak. It was as if it wanted to pierce through this space, leaving a mark in the air. This spear strike was not bad, but Tang Ao was not satisfied. Xiao Yun clearly had some battle experience, or else it would be impossible for him to stab out like that. However, from that spear strike, Tang Ao could see that Xiao Yun's battle experience was not enough. Also, most of the time, Xiao Yun fought one-on-one. Chapter 1906. Bang! The long spear in Xiao Yun's hand collided with the Ironbone Wolf's iron claws. The Ironbone Wolf's iron claws were not at a disadvantage against a Grade 2 spirit tool. This time, the Ironbone Wolf only paused in midair for a moment, but Xiao Yun was pushed back 3 steps. While Xiao Yun was at a disadvantage, the Ironbone Wolves on the left and right instantly launched their attacks. Fortunately, Yi Su had already noticed the problem, so when the 2 Ironbone Wolves attacked from the left and right, Yi Su instantly threw out 2 Azure Fireballs. Yi Su's 2 fireballs weren't very powerful, but the timing was perfect. Just as the 2 wolves opened their mouths to howl, the 2 fireballs were thrown into the air and exploded, causing the 2 wolves to spit out blood. Although they looked to be in a difficult position, they weren't fatally wounded. Yi Su's fireballs were extremely powerful, but he was able to control his strength. Xiao Yun and Yi Su's resistance also aroused the Ironbone Wolves' bloodthirsty impulse. The Ironbone Wolves immediately stopped probing and surrounded them. At this time, Xiao Yun knew that he was going to die here, but he still didn't retreat half a step, still tightly holding the long spear in his hand. In Xiao Yun's mind, as long as he killed one more Ironbone Wolf, the others would have a higher chance of survival. You blockhead, retreat. I'll hold them off for a while. You quickly sent a message to senior brother Murong Zhan for help. Although Yi Su was smart at this time, Yi Su also felt some despair. When he left the team, Yi Su was very calm because he couldn't stand Murong Zhan's face, but Yi Su didn't expect that they would encounter trouble so quickly. Although looking for Murong Zhan at this time was very shameful, if he died here today, then everything would be gone. Now that they haven't been separated for a long time, Yi Su felt that Murong Zhan and the others must still be nearby. Hearing Yi Su's words, Xiao Yun didn't move. Xiao Yun was a very principled person. At this moment, he would rather die than send a message to Murong Zhan for help. However, Xiao Yun looked back at Tang Ao, Xiao Ming, and Yi Su. Xiao Yun wavered. He would die because he didn't have the ability, but he couldn't drag Tang Ao and the others down. With this thought in mind, Xiao Yun also took out his communication bead. However, before Xiao Yun could send a distress signal to Murong Zhan, Xiao Yun saw an Ironbone Wolf with a circle of golden fur around its neck approaching from afar. Xiao Yun and Yi Su fell into despair when they saw the Iron Bone Wolf King. At that instant, the one that walked over was an Iron Wolf King. That Iron Wolf King's cultivation impressively reached the peak of the 6th level of the Origin Realm. None of these students could deal with such an existence. The monstrous beasts of the 6th level of the Origin Realm were dealt with by Samayan or Li Jiao. Even Hua Qingfeng, who was the strongest within the group of students, only had the cultivation of the early stages of the 6th level of the Origin Realm. If he met the Iron Bone Wolf King, he could only escape for his life. Whether or not he could escape was another question. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.